Welcome, everyone. I call to order the Oxford Preparatory Academy regular meeting of the Board of Directors. This is October 26, 2017. We are going to go into closed session and then 7 o'clock p.m. open session. We have a lot of new faces that we've never seen before. I trust there's a lot of band parents here, so thank you so much for coming out. It's nice to meet all of you. Our meeting location is Oxford Preparatory Academy, South Orange County Campus, 23000 Via Santa Maria, Mission Viejo, California, 92691. And our teleconference location, you can hear us, I believe. Can you hear us over there? If they don't wave hands, that's not a good... There we go, okay. Oxford Preparatory Academy, Saddleback Valley Campus, 22882 Lamont Drive, Lake Forest, California, 92630. The public, including public attending a teleconference location, are invited to address the board regarding items listed on the agenda. Comments on an agenda item will be accepted during consideration of that item or prior to consideration of the item in the case of a closed session item. Please turn in your comment cards to the board secretary prior to the item you wish to speak on. Call to order. Raymond Jackson.
Present.
Albert Diaz.
Present.
Joseph Haney.
Present.
Sandra Garner, present. Pledge of Allegiance. Gracie, are you ready? She's going to lead us in the pledge. So if you'll all please stand.
My name is Gracie and I'm from Instructor 4th grade class. Put your hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Great, thank you. It's nice to hear the voice of children. Great job, Gracie. Approval of agenda for regular board meeting of October 26, 2017. May I have a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll make a motion.
Can I have a second? I'll second it.
I would like to comment on that a little bit.
Okay.
So if we could please direct staff to develop a policy. Thank you for moving over there. If you can please develop a policy that directs the board about how to reconcile a dispute, or how do items get on the agenda? It's my understanding currently that if the chair doesn't want it on the agenda, it won't go on the agenda. And so, because we don't have a policy otherwise. So.
Yeah, that's a great idea. We've spent all the past 11 months dealing with FICMAP and making sure that all of our new policies and procedures addressed all of those concerns. And now it's time to go back and take a look at our board policies and see basic things like, especially now that we've returned to normalcy or some kind of normalcy, how do we get things on the agenda? The other part of that you want to take a look at is the timing element, okay? How much time before the agenda for that meeting does it need to be submitted? And take a look at best practice. I take a look at CCSA and what's done locally. And then the other thing that you might want to take a look at is if something is voted down on an agenda, how much time needs to go by before it comes back and under what circumstances, because that's usually part of governance as well. So we look forward to getting back your report to us.
And as a part of that, is the consideration going to be given to, instead of us doing closed session right away, and then sometimes there's a marathon, right, where everybody has to sit around and wait and then come back. Is there some way that we can flip-flop that? And I don't know that there is, but I didn't know if that was part of the analysis that would come into that.
Or
We
maybe
actually
just a second
had it
item.
the other way, and what was happening was the opposite effect is that people were, hey, can you do closed session first? And then we just show up at a specific time. So I'm not quite sure what's best. I think because we have a performance, it's a little different, but usually only a couple people show up we try to get into closed session as quickly as possible. Only a few people show up, and then we go into, and then they show up after that. So, do you recall? I mean, it didn't. People were asking to flip.
Yeah, right. Parents were saying we work all day. we can't get there by 4:30 or 5, we'd appreciate if you'd start open session at 7 for those parents who wanted to attend. So that's why we started doing closed session early. And that's typical, I think, of all of the localities, of all of our authorizers. I think they do closed session first and then they go into open session at a time when parents can actually be there and participate.
I'd like to second Mr. Jackson's request, and that we come up with a process that allows for a healthy debate of subject matter, so that board members feel free to put things on the agenda so that it can be discussed, with an eye towards discussing it publicly as often as possible, obviously within the constraints that we're operating, but to make sure that there's not a bottleneck that keeps ideas from not getting on the agenda.
Exactly. Great idea. Okay?
For the next regular board meeting.
Yeah, if you could bring that back to the next regular board meeting. Okay, so that we can discuss and get all the information to decide what we want to do.
So you won't have an actionable, it'll be a discussion topic, not an action item?
That's typically how it goes.
And then in the interim, just in the absence of any authority, having discussed this with one of our attorneys yesterday, I'd like to propose that we just allow any board member to bring something to the agenda for the next meeting until we have a procedure.
Can I second that?
Well, no, it's not an actionable item that's on our agenda. So, but the proper way to do this would be to have, and I've already invited Mr. Haney will actually be involved in putting the agenda together for the next meeting. So we'll be doing that 2 weeks out.
But I think the question is, if at the next meeting, right, this is all about the agenda, right? And so currently, if I would like to have an item on the agenda and the chairperson doesn't want it on there, it won't be on there. And then we're not going to talk about it.
But there's no authority for that.
And the reason for that is because there is no policy in place that says that, hey, if one of the board members wants it on and the chairperson doesn't want it on, because there's no policy that says what's the process, the chair trumps. So the chair gets to decide doesn't go on or not. So I think what Mr. Haney's saying, and let me know if that's right, is there any way for us to have at the next meeting some ways for us to get items on the agenda?
Sure. Mr. Haney and I will be meeting 2 weeks prior to the board, and we will be discussing which items are going to go on the agenda. Yes.
And if you don't
Yes.
want it on
No,
there,
no,
will
no.
it?
I think you're being disingenuous with the public here. The fact is that you came forward the day of and asked for something to be put on the agenda, and that's why I'm saying the timing becomes extremely important. A lot of time and effort goes into agendizing something, including the backup material. We've never had to rescind a vote because we've always put a lot of time into making sure that things are agendized properly, that they're consistent with education code, and so that's why the time element always also becomes important. But I think with Mr. Haney joining me 2 weeks before, I think we're going to be able to handle that, because that way the only things that will go on the agenda are things that are proper, that are consistent with education code. But there's nothing that says precludes you from bringing something forward, provided it's done in a timely way.
If I can jump in?
Sure. I just don't want to keep these kids waiting too long.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We also have to be careful that we don't bring to lengthy discussions and voting on things that wasn't on our agenda. So if this process isn't on our agenda, we could, suffer kind of a, Brown Act violation by lengthy debates, and we can direct, all we have the authority to do is if something comes up that's not on the agenda is we can direct staff to work on it. But voting on it puts us in,
Sure.
in a bad position.
Can we just have her make it an action item and not a discussion item? Because that puts it out yet another month.
Well, a policy needs to come forward. Based on my research and based on best practices, and she may discover some other things, what's supposed to happen is that the board chair works with the executive director and in developing the agenda. And the vice chair works with the chairperson too. So it's this executive director who pretty much works through most of it, works in coordination with the chair, and the chair works in coordination with the vice chair. If any single board member wants something to be put forward, and again, this is what I've learned in the last year, then they can bring it to the executive director, bring it to the chair, bring it to the vice chair. If that team doesn't think it should be on, then it could be open for discussion at a later date. But it has to be, the whole thing has to be in line with where the organization is going, what the mission is, what the end game is, and not just throw things on the agenda. So there really is the executive director, the chair, and the vice chair who are critical in developing the agenda.
But Mr. Diaz, when Mr. Jackson and I went to our orientation, the question of how to get something on the agenda was asked. We were told, just notify Mr. Crow, just notify Ms. Diaz, or Ms. Garner, or just notify Jennifer, and it'll get on the agenda. So that was the process that was told to the two of us as new board members. There's no written authority anywhere in our bylaws, and we
Correct.
confirmed that with our attorneys, that there's no bylaw, there's no authority for the chair to not put something on that has been requested by a board member. And I know that the matter that I think Mr. Jackson has in mind was requested a couple weeks ago, which was well in advance of the time needed to prepare the agenda. So I think that's where the sense of frustration that this is being bottlenecked and controlled, as opposed to being a very forward, transparent process.
Okay.
Okay. And so what's going to happen is the executive director will come forward with a proposed policy that we can all discuss and review.
Sure.
Okay, so I have a motion and a second to approve the agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye?
Aye.
We can't move forward.
We can't move forward if we
Yeah.
don't approve the agenda.
Aye.
Your vote?
Under protest, aye, so the kids can perform.
Okay. Okay. You saw a lot of exciting democracy in progress. Okay. Let's take our seats over here. Denise, did you want to do the introductions?
I will.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to turn the introductions over to Mr. T. And I'm really thankful for our students to perform. We're really excited to hear you guys today. And thank you, Mr. T, for getting this all together for us. So thank you.
Thank you all for having us. It's a pleasure to be here and a privilege to have everybody here watching. These are some of our best fourth graders, but I'm going to let them introduce them because they do a much better job. So,
Hi, my name is Cameron. I'm from Ms. Drucker's fourth grade class. And I'm Chase. I'm in Mr. N's NYU class. We're introducing the fourth grade recorder performance. Hope you enjoy.
one, two, one, two, ready, and. First row first.
Great job. Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay. Public announcement for reason of closed session. Closed session for discussion of possible action, conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, Government Code Section 54956.9, subsection D, subsection 2, two matters. Conference with legal counsel, existing litigation, Government Code Section 54956.9, subsection D, subsection 1. Oxford Preparatory Academy versus Enlightened Learning Solutions. And Public Employment Appointment, Government Code Section 54957, Title Executive Director. Public comments on closed session items. Remarks for closed session items shall be limited to no more than 3 minutes. Please turn your comment card in to the board secretary prior to this agenda item. Jennifer, do we have one?
We have one. Karen leads.
Okay, Karen, where's Karen? Okay.
Can you hear me with this? Can you know?
But they can hear you over
Can they hear
there.
you over there? Saddleback Valley, can you
me
hear?
if I speak into the mic? Okay, great.
Okay, good.
Okay, I would like to just speak for a moment on a few things, all regarding the closed session comments of Executive Director. I want to reiterate my support for Denise Pasco as Executive Director for a few reasons that I'd like the board to consider. I appreciate the way that she's willing to work together, her honesty, her integrity. I appreciate that she listens to teachers, admin, students, and parents, all different perspectives. I appreciate her humility in the way that she continues to have a good relationship with our authorizers. And I feel like being in the position I am as Honor Society president and being in meetings where we interviewed 3 options for executive director, as I sat in on that meeting, which I won't share too because I honor and respect the privacy of that meeting, but I can speak to the transparency and the faith that I have in her leadership abilities. I think that one thing that was brought to my attention, that I got an email on the 24th of this week, October 24th, a letter from Capo Unified School District. And my question to you as a board is, when and how will you get that information out to our parent community? I'm kind of the liaison between, and I feel like it's put on my plate to address the parents with information that is not, it shouldn't be my responsibility to notify them. So I'm wondering, is it the executive director that we don't have that should be sending it out, or is it the managing director that recently switched in the last few days, or is it the board who is going to take responsibility to bring us together and make this a more cohesive, working together environment so that we can unify instead of feeling like there's a divide and a wedge that's being put between great people, whether it's teachers or admin or parents or students. I feel like we could really come together with our authorizers with honesty and integrity. I appreciate the new additions to our board, that they seem to be asking the hard questions and fighting the hard battle, so I appreciate that. But as far as the executive director, as you go to closed session, I really hope, and for the benefit of our children, to have someone that is Denise Pasco in the position as executive director. So with that said, I don't know if it's appropriate for me to send this out. I'm not one to create drama, but I do think that's important for our parents to see the direct notification from CUSD, as it will be the one who decides to shut down our SOC campus. So with that, that's all I have to say tonight.
Thank you.
Can we clarify something from her? I just say, can we clarify?
Yes.
Your question was,
Who's going to send out the notification?
okay, so just who's going to, well, a notification, or is who's going to send out that letter that they sent
Right.
us?
I think all of it. I think answering
Okay.
the questions that were asked, and it seems like that the CUSD is now a little bit more coming back and saying you didn't answer our questions, and now that we had someone who was in the position as interim executive director doing a good job to build those, and then now she's not in that, but then we're trying to find someone. The learning curve seems to be, we're always chasing this learning curve of being able to find a solution, and if you have someone who was in the position to have the communication out, have the solutions there, and given a chance to make those amends, then I think my question is who's going to do it? And kind of to your point of, if it's always passing the buck, then I feel like we're always chasing our circles around. So I feel like, who is it? Me? Can I send it out? Send it to our PR as an Honor Society board that we're not associated with. We're a separate entity, but I feel like, being that I got the email directly from CUSD, can I send that out? Are you going to send that out? If you are going to send that out, why is it taken 2 days? I got it at 10 o'clock on Tuesday morning. And being transparent, I feel like it's your responsibility as a board to have that communication out to us as parents, so that we aren't coming to you to ask at the next board meeting and have this, month in between, and then the school year is over. So I think if we have information that's shared on Tuesday, we should, by Tuesday, an hour or two later, should have it out to the parent community, in my humble opinion.
Yeah.
So who's going to do that is my question.
That would be appropriate for the managing director to take care of that and send that communication out. So we'll make sure that's taken care of. Okay, thank you. Okay, so we're going into closed session at 4:56. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're back in session at 7:13 p.m. Thank you for your patience. We do have 2 items to report out of closed session. And Mr. Haney, would you like to do the first report out?
Yeah, let me find what I'm supposed to say.
Okay.
All right. First item to report out is tonight the Board of Oxford Preparatory Academy voted to consolidate its current mediation and any potential litigation involving Sue Roach with the law firm of Theodora Oranger, who has been representing the organization in its litigation with Ed Lighton. Procopio is no longer representing Oxford Preparatory Academy in this matter.
Okay, thank you. And we have a second report out. Mr. Jackson. Thank you.
Sorry.
So we are directing staff to further work with our consultant, Dr. Halfacre, to secure final proposals from national search firms with the intent to hire an external ED candidate. The reason we are searching for an external candidate is because the previous ED process was corrupted when a then sitting board member shared highly confidential information with an internal ED candidate. The information shared included other candidate resumes and some of the potential interview questions. Those emails were discovered based on a bulk email request from one of our authorizers, the Orange County Department of Education.
Okay, thank you. SOC site update. Denise Pasco, Chancellor, and Nick Sessions, Dean of SOC.
Good evening.
Good evening. Are we going to do the charter first, or are we going to do
We were going to do that campus update first.
campus update? Okay.
I think that's what's on the agenda.
He just fooled me.
Oh, okay. I think we're looking for
Okay.
the campus update up there. There we go.
What's the president on my screen? For
It's okay like that.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so we have our update for the evening, and the first thing we wanted to share with everyone is our success in the CASP. Based on the success of our students on the CASP, we are the #1 academic performing school, grades K through 8 in CUSD. And we're waiting to see all the results of the other schools in Orange County as well.
Number one,
Yeah.
How many K through 8s are
Are you
there?
surprised?
like no higher school. I mean, because that is so significant.
Do you know how many K through 8s we
I
have?
don't, I will look into that.
Oh, okay.
But our data was where we were the #1 top performing elementary and also.
And middle school.
Got it, okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But we did compare ourselves with the K through 5s, K through 6s in the areas, and then the 6 through 8s.
Okay.
So there you can see our data on the next slide. I don't have the clicker. It's not working, okay.
There we go, we got it. Okay. So
Okay. So as you can see for ELA, OPA SOC is on the far left. So if you look at the charts, we're right here. You know, English language arts, 89.46% of proficient or above in English language arts. And then you can see the next category, which is CUSD at 69.3%, Orange County 57.39%, and the state of California 48.56%. Then if you look at mathematics, our scores were 81.8% of our students were proficient or above. CUSDs were 59.52, Orange County 48.26, and the state of California 37.56, and that's students that are proficient or above.
Yeah. So our
So
champions.
very successful.
We recently had our jogathon. This was a wonderful event for both our champions and also our parent community. All the different grade levels had different assigned times where they went outside. It was also orange out. Kiddos ran around. After they got done, they all had orange popsicles. I think some of them enjoyed that part the most. Again, it was just a wonderful event, and it was a fundraiser. Overall, grand total, we raised over $29,000 as a school via our jogathon.
Your goal was trying to beat 30, right?
It was.
Is that what I heard?
It was very close.
But our school, originally we had said 25,000, so this was amazing.
I was an overachiever in that area. So.
Yes. And we had told students if they got to 30, they would have a free dress day. We got close, we're going to be letting them know that they get the mulligan.
Yeah, we're going to go ahead and
Get it in.
30,
yeah.
We had a spirited fundraising competition between all of our different classrooms, and Professor Elliott, our little first grade kiddos, ended up pulling in $3,400 in fundraising. So all in all, a really wonderful event. That would not have been possible without the significant contributions of our honor society and also our parent community. So it was awesome.
Good job.
Yeah.
And then we have opened our SOC Game Room, and you can see there we have the bright orange walls. It's a very active, fun place for the kids. We have the large chess pieces on there, and we have games galore. Basketball is in there, so just really fun things. Our kids are loving it. The first group that went in there was were the students that won the jogathon, the most money brought in. So very cool for the kids.
Is this one of the new portables?
And this is our old band room.
The old
our
band
old
room.
band room
Okay.
is now game room / for our foreign language for proficiency. Our Mandarin 8th grade Mandarin class also meets in there, so it's really our multi-purpose room.
And we have black willows in there as well.
And then when we have overflow for kindergarten, when both kindergarten classes are here between 11:15 and 12:30, they typically have their different pull-outs, but then they also pull into there because then it's another separate room. So we're using it for a variety of things. So it's great.
Now, I heard that room was so popular that it got to a point where it was 2 out, 2 in, 2 out, 2 in. Is that right?
Oh, yeah, we had that.
We were monitoring, yes.
And we recently had our first Blackwell's student store, and it was, yeah,
The line was intense
Yeah,
outside.
it was
The kids
awesome.
couldn't wait to get in there.
it's good.
And then we also had our Scholastic Book Fair. We actually this year combined it with a family fun night that our Honor Society put on, and we raised over $12,000 worth of Scholastic products. So our sales were over $12,000. As a result of that, we have over $11,000 that we have earned from Scholastic.
Yeah.
So we'll be sharing that out with the library, and then the teachers will be
Yeah.
purchasing books.
We've already purchased more books, a new carpet, but then we really want the classrooms to have that robust titles as well. So
And is that a separate 503C? Where's
The
that?
Honor Society?
Yeah.
Yes, they are.
Okay, good.
Honor Society, yeah.
Good.
So let's do Honor Society.
And then we held grade level town hall meetings. We had some parents from the 6th and 8th grade classrooms that were questioning the rigor, the homework, just some of the changes that have been made with the world language component and then the math program. So we held meetings for any parent that wanted to attend, and we went through the process of what the day looks like, what homework should look like, and then just question and answer session. So very, very informative, great turnout, over 50 parents each night.
Yeah, and our professors did a great job of just filling the questions, and just parents just wanted to have answers, right? So that's something we want to have, that continual communication back and forth. All right, this is just kind of a rundown of different events that we had or that we're going to have. We've been busy. Red Ribbon Week.
Good job.
Spirit
You've been
Days-
practicing that.
Yeah.
That's a tough one.
Our
tell.
Spirit Days have been this week. Tomorrow we got our big Pep Rally. We've had monthly OPA award ceremonies to recognize student achievement and also grade level multiple intelligence performances. We actually just recently had our 8th graders did a rap battle from the hit musical Hamilton, where they had going back and forth. So it was very MI, and our little
you get that on
kindergartners-
video?
Oh, I did.
Okay, send me the link, please.
Our first graders were looking at them like, what is happening? So it was great. We had California Shakeout Drill, Spirit, Pep Rallies, SOC versus SV athletic competitions. We've had one. Tomorrow's the next big one. We're looking forward to going over to SV. Our Anaheim Halloween Parade is this weekend. So we're excited for Mr. T and the band to go to that. Excellence Academy has begun. That's the before school, after school targeted intervention tutoring. CASP interims. We started our interims this week. 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. Next week is 6th, 7th, and 8th. Because then when we get that interim data back, our students will look at that and then make individualized performance goals for themselves for the year. Cyber Safety Cop Assembly. He's coming next Monday to talk to our upper grade kiddos. We had the city of Irvine come out, actually, their police department, and did an empathy presentation with our 7th and 8th graders. So it's been really great for that.
On the cyber safety,
Yes.
I remember sitting through my first, it was the gentleman who did the Light, Bright, and Polite, Josh, what was his name? Ox. And he was going through all those apps, teaching
Yes.
the parents what to look out for. Is that
Very
what he's
similar.
doing too?
Yeah, Sergeant Cranford already did a presentation at Saddleback, and then just 2 nights ago, we actually had a joint parent opportunity where we had over, I think it was probably close to 40 parents there between SV and SOC, where parents could go, and he gave a whole presentation to parents about safety.
All the
on
apps
the net.
and
And then he's coming to talk to our kiddos on Monday.
That's awesome.
But yeah, we've had Family Fun Night, Book Fair, Jogathon. We just finished our annual CUSD facilities inspection. Watchdogs is awesome. That's dads of great students. Positive male figures on our campus. They go through a class, and then they get a really cool bright neon vest and a walkie-talkie, so they look legit, and they get to spend the day on campus and help in classrooms and on the playground. Middle school dance. Our staff participated in very important suicide prevention training. We are excited. We're going to be offering basketball here. National Junior Basketball League participation for grades 3 through 8. Next week we're going to have tryouts, but no student will be turned away. We'll have different levels of competition. We had our stakeholder town hall. Our staff really enjoyed having a chance to meet with you, Mr. Diaz, and our staff board member one. We'd love the chance to meet with all the different board members. Literature Day is coming up next Tuesday, the Serpentine Parade. And then we have an enrichment field trip happening where kiddos are going to go to the 49th annual Powwow and American Indian Cultural Festival. So we've been
Just a little bit busy.
Yeah.
What do you do after lunch?
Then we go to our spirit time,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Goodness gracious.
So we have our spirit days where students dress up in orange or teal, meet outside. We have our cheerleaders. They run through just like at a high school game. The football players run through the cheerleaders, and then you can see our little ones getting into it. But
We
really,
had a sign that said SOC rules, and I took a picture of that.
With the tongue out.
Yeah, with the tongue out.
but really fun time for our little ones to see the bigger ones performing and just get involved in the spirit.
Yeah. And that's that for update
Just-
for
That's just
SOC.
last week.
Quick snapshot.
Yeah, quick one. So yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, as a reminder, at each one of our meetings, we're going to be walking through our charter to make sure that everyone understands our charter, because that's what unites us all. And so tonight, Denise Pascoe and Nick Sessions again are going to do element 1.3, which is the educational philosophy.
Just 1 second, we're pulling it up.
Okay?
And I'll be ready to roll.
Two of my three children are happily participating in Excellence Academy.
It's a great program. It's for that bubble group, just to see if we can push them up and get them to do better. Yeah, that's nice. Okay, so we're moving on into our educational philosophies. So we have 6 elements.
Chase, it's not clicking. And this is from element 1C
C.
of our charter.
There we go. Perfect, thank you. So we have our 6 elements. We have the theory of multiple intelligences, research-based strategies, standards-based instruction through backwards design or backwards planning, gate strategies, service learning, and the revised Bloom's taxonomy.
All right, and going on to the theory of multiple intelligences, we have word smart, which is linguistic learners, number smart, which is logical mathematical learners, picture smart, which is our spatial learners.
Can we make that a little bigger? Pretty please? Is that a way to do
And we
that?
can share this out with all of you as
We
well.
can share this
Yes,
handout out.
perfect. And then we have music smart. And you know, at the start of every year, all of our staff plus all of our students take the MI test, because often from year to year, students' strengths change, right? Because we want well-rounded, young 21st century citizens, right? So we do see that from year to year, where different ones are their strengths or their areas of growth.
And the little ones will run up to you and tell you, I'm word smart.
Great. Awesome.
Yeah. So then the other 4 are our bodily kinesthetic, which are body smart. We have the interpersonal, people. We have intrapersonal, and we have the naturalist, the nature smart. So interesting. It is interesting how the students, their intelligences change. And so in the classroom, we try to reach all of their intelligences.
The theory of multiple intelligence, again, here at OPA, we teach the content of the state standards through all 8 intelligences, and it allows students to comprehend and retain information based on the fact that they're receiving instruction in a variety of methodologies, right? It's not one-stop shop, right?
Right.
So,
So another way to reach our students is through what you have as majors, and that's making academic jumps over rigorous standards, and we have that twice a year. And these courses are designed to enhance their intelligences, which every individual has.
then we have our research-based strategies.
And we incorporate the best practices based on research in order to have positive effects on student achievement. That's our focus and our goal.
Such as,
Thank you. Turning my page, sorry. Identifying similarities and differences, summarizing and note-taking, reinforcing effort and providing recognition, homework and practice, non-linguistic representations, cooperative learning, setting objectives and providing feedback, generating and testing hypothesis, cues, questions, and advanced organizers.
Standards-based instruction through backwards design, and essentially it's just we as educators sit down and say, okay, what do the students need to know at the end, right? We look at the standard and then backwards plan from there, right? So what do they need to master, and then go back from there, so that we ensure that we've covered all the necessary steps that are needed so that students are able to master those standards.
And we hold professional development every Friday, and then every Wednesday our teachers have a chance to work together and collaborate.
And trying to shift that really to data analysis, where they're looking at a common assessment and saying, okay, our kids, 80% of them were proficient, well, what happened to the 20%? And then drilling down and say, well, actually, a disproportionate amount got number 4 wrong. Let's look at the question stem, right? How students don't get questions wrong because they aren't smart, it's because they don't know how to enter the conversation often, right? They don't know how to navigate the question. So those are the kind of discussions we want to have.
And have the teachers working together. So if a student, let's say that my students don't do well on a certain question and Nick's do really well on a question, I would say, Nick, your kids did great there. What did you do? And then so keep learning from each other.
I'll say secret. No, I'm just kidding. Keep strategies.
So we utilize great GATE strategies, which provide a challenging learning environment for all of our students. And then the Bloom's revised taxonomy is the focal point of the instructional program.
All right.
We'd be happy to share this presentation out with the board members if you would like. Just we're giving you a real quick glimpse at it. So.
Service learning. Okay, that's another one of our major educational philosophies. Essentially, students provide a genuine service to their school or community while deepening their understanding of curricular content. And we do this because then students acquire an appreciation of the roles in the global role, right? Trying to develop civic ownership and just this idea that things are bigger than the confines of the school, right? Like, who are we and how do we fit into the global dynamic?
So are they actually involved in service projects?
Yes.
And what kinds of examples of service projects are they involved in?
So currently we have our greenhouse is starting up that Ms. DeVito, we have a greenhouse that we bought that is going to be put up, and she has her Green Thumb Society, and we're working on that because a key component of this would be where, you know, we actually start growing vegetables, but then we do something with those, right? Giving those actually out into the community.
Mm-hmm.
I know Mr. N is, last year he did it for Veterans Day. We're going to have students go again and they write letters to veterans, right? Those types of things. We're having them realize that bigger picture.
So is every child involved in the service learning activity, or is it volunteer?
No, in some aspect, each classroom has their own service learning activity.
Oh, okay.
So it varies depending upon the grade level.
The 2 examples I just gave to you were volunteer of students.
Okay.
Oh yeah, I want to do that.
Okay.
Yeah. Hurricane relief.
Hurricane really down. We have an ongoing
Then we have a food can drive.
Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving. All right. Oh.
And then we have our Bloom's taxonomy. And
What's
our,
that?
Bloom's taxonomy.
And our professors work to incorporate the critical thinking skills, which are the creative. So we can't see the bottom of it, but if you look at, understanding is the very basic, remembering. Very basic, moving up to understanding, applying, analyzing, evaluating, creative. And so the teachers are working really hard to get the students at that top level where they're creating and they're utilizing those critical thinking skills.
And that was a super quick snapshot of element 1C from our charter. And that concludes our time up here.
I haven't. No, it doesn't. No.
Oh, boy.
Okay. What do you have as far as resources and tools that help parents? Because I know the kiddos come home at night, right, and they have their homework that they're doing.
Yes.
And that helps them identify, they already know where this child's strength is, right, because they've done the assessment at the beginning of the year. Mm-hmm. Do you have any resources that helps them when they have a child that's home and they're struggling, like with math, or are your homework assignments constructed in such a way where they do different things that involve the different intelligences?
There are. So, I mean, they have everything from worksheets, which are very, very basic, and that's your remembering recall information.
Right.
Working all the way up into the projects, which incorporate all the creative and critical thinking skills.
And so do you
So
have?
it varies, and it could be a number of items that evening. So it could be a worksheet, it could be working on part of the project, always reading. They read every single evening.
Uh-huh.
So
And so it's like sometimes do they have activities like, let's say they're doing vocabulary, right? Where they have to be bouncing a ball, or they have options of things that they can do that helps them and the parents. Do you spend any time helping the parents understand these things? Do they come to workshops or?
we do have workshops, and that was one of our focuses with the 6th and 8th grade parents. Where can you go if you need help? So we
Okay.
did address that directly. And then when we have our parent information meetings, then we talk about other options they have for support.
Yeah, at our upcoming parent collegiate meeting, that would be something that we
Okay.
right? Because all parents want to be able to help their student.
Right.
But the whole idea of MI is like, okay, your works
Exactly.
are cool, what does that mean?
Right.
And that's where we want to be that, to fill in that gap.
But the professors in their newsletters also will provide some tools for the students for that specific week.
And
as well.
so they get newsletters every week
Every
to the
week,
parents
yeah.
that help them.
Professors
Okay.
send home newsletters and then their agendas, and then on that same piece where we don't want homework to be in excess, right?
Right.
Where in our upper grades, they are putting anticipated maximum minute markers,
Okay.
right? Because if a student is going in excess, that's a conversation that needs to happen, right?
Right.
Why?
Is that new? I don't remember.
We started that in
Everything
the-
you've mentioned so far, I'm like, okay, yeah, remember this, remember that, remember
No.
that. The anticipated
Based
minute
upon
markers
the
is
town
new.
halls we had with parents,
Mhm.
it sounded like something that our students and our stakeholders wanted and needed, and so that's, I think, helped the professors in understanding, because as a teacher, right, we'd be like, yeah, it's gonna take 30 minutes, and then 80% of your class took 2 hours, right? That's a conversation that needs to
Right.
be had, so
Okay.
that is something we've instituted
That's
in our upper
nice.
grades, yeah.
And we have the kiddos, they put their time that they took next to the teacher's minute markers. So it'll give the professors a good
Yeah.
idea of what's happening.
Where was that? Where was
So
that
really
when I
hearing
did
the concerns from stakeholders and then working to address it as a community.
Right.
it? Okay.
Yeah, that's
Thank you.
fantastic. As a father of a boy who'll take a 10-minute assignment and stretch it out over an hour, I would love to have had something to go back to him and say no.
I can
It's
hear
It should have
you.
only taken you 10 minutes.
Yeah, it's a great tool.
Well, because all the students have the agendas, right? So
Right.
then it's just, as the professor, here's what I anticipate, but then it's that constantly using data to drive our instruction, right?
And I think it's excellent. I mean,
Absolutely.
It
good
was
for the
a
kids,
small
but
change,
as
but
a
it's
parent,
made
I can
huge
see it
dividends
numerous.
from
Absolutely.
the amount of emails we've gotten and that parents have gotten, the
Teachers,
professors have
yeah.
gotten, you know, that homework should not be in excess. It
Yeah.
shouldn't.
Right.
The town halls that we had were very informative for us and as well as for the parents. So it was a two-way street there.
And is that being shared, is that going on both campuses or just this campus? With
We have
things like
shared,
those?
I have spoken to Mr. Bridges, because they had asked about it, and
Yeah.
we do plan on having one with 7th grade once Ms. Bayonetta comes back from maternity leave, and it's just something that there's really no reason not to, because it just is a nice forum, and parents want to be heard, and sometimes they have questions where they're like, I don't understand this, and then hearing the teacher explain it, it changes, so you don't have those same questions all year, right?
Right.
So the vocabulary was one instance where there are multiple ways for the students to learn the vocabulary. And some of the parents said, well, my child doesn't like to draw. And then we discussed that this is a program that is very successful and this is just one of the parts of it.
Yeah, so they've
That's
been
good.
really effective. It's been good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good job.
Okay, under our presentations, this is going to be our first advisory council update, and we have Saddleback Valley, Brittany, and Hadley. Or is it just, who is it?
I'm not Brittany. It's Mr. Trevis.
Mr.
It's not Brittany
AKA
Trevis.
Brittany.
I'm not either of those people.
Am I, oh wait, I'm sorry. Wrong one. Brittany and Hadley, you're coming up soon. Preston Trevis, am I right? Right?
That's me.
Okay,
You look like a
sorry
Brittany.
about that.
That's okay. And this is actually my first time speaking at a board meeting. I'm excited.
Well,
This is-
congratulations and
Well,
welcome.
adjust that microphone up so
Yes.
everybody in
Need to make
YouTube
this
land can
smaller?
hear
Oh
you.
man.
You're live.
Mr. Bridges is,
Hello.
Can you hear
me?
Oh, yeah.
All right. Thanks, Mr. Bridges.
Ooh, listen to that voice.
It's because
You
I'm
love
talking
radio.
all day. Okay, my name is Mr. Trebus. I'm a 6th grade professor at Saddleback, and I am going to give a report on our Saddleback Advisory Council.
Okay.
So our council has agreed to meet every month on the second Thursday of every month except for December. And at our last meeting, our council went over our bylaws, and we actually approved our bylaws. And rather than go with the Robert's Rules of Order, our council approved the consensus process. So that's rather than taking votes, we discuss any issues as a council, and if we have to put it to a vote, we will put any issues up to a vote. So we're really excited moving forward with this process. And our members, we have Sabina Horgan, a parent, Delight Travis, a parent, Jennifer Mavros, a parent, Debbie Ruvolo, classified staff, Suzanne Lynch, teacher, Preston Trevis, teacher, and then we have our ASB president, Rocco Bond. We have vacancies, we have a parent vacancy, and we actually have an election that will be taking place within the next week to fill that vacancy. And then we have a vacancy as well for another teacher position that we will also be filling this week. For the student representation, we should have an alumni, but considering that our 8th grade graduating class was about 10 students, it was hard to find a student that would come back. And so what we decided to do was have a current 8th grade student that was elected by their peers. And so that election process, I believe, is taking place tomorrow, and they will have that person that will come attend our meetings as well, just to have that representation from the students.
What time is your meeting?
Our meetings are at 6:30, second Thursday of every month. And the members of our council, we have the chairperson, which is myself. Our scribe is Suzanne Lynch. Our stack keeper and vice chair is Delight Travis, and our timekeeper is Sabina Horgan. And lastly, I'm just making this very brief. We wanted to hear from the parents from Saddleback and get their support and feedback about what they want to see in their future executive director. And so what we did over the past week was we sent out a survey to all the parents, and I have all the results for you. I'll hand these out to you. And
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And in this survey, we had 43 responses, and essentially the parents were given 3 things to fill out. The first thing they had to do, you'll see at the top, was we listed all the duties of the Oxford Preparatory Academy's executive director as outlined in our charter, and we asked parents to select 2 to 3 duties that they felt were important to them. And you can see that I highlighted the top 2. The, what's that? Oh, yes. 74% voted that they felt that one of the most important duties was providing leadership in identifying school needs and in determining goals and objectives for developing long and short-term goals. And then the second highest with 72% was ensuring that the school is fiscally sound and stable. So our top, those were the top 2 duties as voted by the parents. And then I just, as you can see down there, because it was a survey online, you couldn't see it on the side, so I just copied and pasted that down there. And then the other 2 questions were, in your own words, what are you looking for in Oxford Preparatory Academy's next executive director? And you will see all 43 responses, and those, they go on and on and on. And then the second question we asked was, what are the characteristics of a successful executive director? So this is direct feedback from the parents from Saddleback. I'm not going to go into any of these. This is just for you to use in your search for that executive director. And I could also provide the PDF for you if you would like as well. And it's blurry, of course, and knowing being a teacher, that always happens. So technical difficulties as always, but that is my report, and we're really excited. As a council at our last meeting, we were filled with a lot of positivity, a lot of ambition to get going with our campus at Saddleback of just resolving issues that parents have, issues kind of that us teachers have, and
We need an educator up here to help us with this document imager.
well,
Just kidding.
that's the end of my presentation. So
But this,
It's the ladybug
It's
experts.
freezing on his end.
don't go anywhere yet.
okay.
Finger pointing.
There we go. Oh,
Yeah, it's freezing. out
Sorry.
there.
it's all right.
Do you want to sit here? You're a ladybug driver.
Excellent job. This is exactly what this board was looking for
Good.
in our advisory councils and the information coming to us. It looks like you asked this as an open-ended question.
Yes.
Right, which I really appreciated. I think you get a lot more useful information when you put it out that way. Now, so these are the parent responses.
Yes.
Did anyone do a survey of your teachers? I received something from Mrs. Lynch, but I was
Yes.
unclear if that was from the teachers.
Yes, we did receive a few emails from teachers.
I got those as well.
And yes, we did get some feedback, but it wasn't a survey like
Got
this.
it.
It was just more of
Okay.
just what are you looking for? Just what's your input? And we had gotten about one email, and we would just talk to a few others about what they were looking for as well.
And something that we're doing until, I guess both sides say, I think we're in a good place now, is during board meetings, we don't get a lot of time for give and take and a lot of conversation. And so what we've been doing with the advisory councils being new is that the managing director, Mr. Crow, and myself were going to each one of these advisory councils as they were getting off the ground and having a real good give and take, a discussion. If they have any questions after a board meeting, why was this decision made, or what kind of input, or can we talk about that? And that's gone very well. So, and it sounds like the advisory council still would like that.
Definitely.
Right?
Definitely.
So what I will be doing is I will be reaching out to my colleagues and saying, showing you the schedule and saying who would like to attend to represent the board. It's really exciting, and you're doing just a dynamic job, and it's exactly what we were hoping for.
Thank you.
Can I speak to the teacher emails?
Sure.
Those have really been excellent.
Good.
You get one every day, every couple of days, you open up, and I gotta say they have been well thought out, well detailed. It's full of information that when you look at it, you think these are good perspectives that we're not seeing because we're not teachers on the campus.
Right.
And it's the kind of information that really, I think, will be beneficial to all of us when we're sitting down and evaluating candidates. So I would encourage the teachers on both campuses, if you've got strong thoughts, tepid thoughts, whatever your thoughts are about what we should be looking for in a candidate, please email them, because I know myself, I think I could speak for everyone on this board, we are reading it, and it's really good for us to see, because that's a really important voice in this process. So thank you for encouraging that. Please take it back to the campus, and we encourage all the teachers on both campuses to keep doing it.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, now Brittany and Hadley, right, from SOC.
Okay, there we go. Now that looks like a Brittany.
Yes.
You can call me Preston.
Yeah, real
Yeah,
tall.
let's fix that mic for you.
Yeah, we can.
You know how to do that?
This was, I think you guys had asked for this copy from the other.
Oh, yeah, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so to open, I'm just gonna go through who our council members are. Our classified staff members are myself, Hadley Fukuda, and Miss Pam Thompson. Our parent members are David Barley, Erica Cox, Erica Kemmer, and Nazanin Najumi. Our teacher members are Brittany McShane and Andrew Nitzeris. We also have our current ASB president, AJ Zadrabek. And our alumni is Jacob Burkett. He was with us in 8th grade last year, obviously, and lives nearby, so he gets here. Right.
So I'm Brittany Bainey, was elected as Brittany McShane, but now I'm Brittany Bainey.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And I'm a 5th grade professor here at SOC and also the secretary of the advisory council. David Barley is our chairperson, and we are still in the process of electing a vice chair. We do have a future meeting coming up in November, and at that point we'll be discussing our bylaws as well as confirming our second chair.
And do you know your date of November
I believe it's November 8th
8th, and what time?
at 5:30.
5:30, okay.
And we had all gotten, we had compiled several bylaws from other groups, and as a council, we're going through and picking out what we think are the most valuable amongst those and what applies best to our group. So we've decided to review those, and then at the next one, as a group, pick which ones we want to implement into our.
Great.
So as an advisory council at our last meeting, we were asked by Ms. Gardner to ask our school populations, which was the staff, the parents, and the students, about the qualities they would hope to see in the future executive director. Our advisory council decided that the best way to reach as many of our families, staff members, and students was through a survey sent out electronically. So as a collective group, we came up with what we consider to be 10 of the top qualities that we would like to see as an advisory council, and we sent that out in a survey of very important, somewhat important, or very important, important, somewhat important, and not important. So they were given a choice with all of them. We had close to 200 responses, which was fantastic, and that included our staff, parents, and then a student survey that was sent out, but it was not quite as, popular.
Okay.
Say.
Free dress every day.
Right. So we're
Soda
gonna
machines.
focus more on the staff and the parent responses.
Can we get the student responses?
Just for fun.
Just think it might be interesting.
Possibly. Yes, we can. Okay. Somehow we'll find them. Yes. So I'm just going to go over a couple of the highlights from the survey.
Okay.
So 91% said that, yeah, and actually I know this was sent out to the board electronically. We wanted to make sure you had hard copies, and then anyone else in attendance, we have hard copies as well.
I'm sorry.
So 91% said it was important or very important that the candidate have a clear administrative credential. 86% said that it was important or very important that the candidate is based out of Orange County and has knowledge of local districts. 95% said it was important or very important that the candidate has shown consistency in previous employments. 91% said it was important or very important that the candidate has previous school district experience. 100% said it was important or very important that the candidate have a clean search history or background check. And other comments based on qualifications not addressed in the survey. So there was also the open-ended at the end where the survey taker could put in comments. So just a couple of those, just quoting some of those comments, are experience preparing students for high school, knowledge of charter schools, transparency and communication skills, someone with ethics that will not let the board bully them and actually focus on students and staff, opportunity for parents to meet with the candidates, current and relative leadership experience, and these results are also going to be shared out via email with our stakeholders tomorrow, so that they're also aware of the information. So again, we're meeting at the beginning of November. At this meeting, we're also going to be discussing ways of facilitating joint celebrations in the future with Saddleback to cultivate a positive relationship that shows our unity as one organization, and then also focusing on creating our bylaws, that each member is highlighting what we find is important, and then we're going to collaborate and come up with our bylaws.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Because I think this could mean a couple of different things. The candidate has previous school district experience.
Yes.
What exactly were you looking for there? Are you saying district level or school site level, or are you
Just
saying
being in a district.
being
So
in a
that
district
way we
as
had
opposed to?
being only private school.
Got it.
This way we had focus on the public entities.
Okay.
And that really, the feeling behind that was that we're obviously dealing with district in terms of our charter.
Mm-hmm.
And so somebody who's experienced that and worked with that kind of communication in that environment would be much more beneficial to us than someone who hasn't
Right.
had that experience.
Okay. I just didn't know exactly what it was you were looking for.
Yeah.
Okay.
And also trying to keep the questions a little concise so
Uh-huh.
they didn't get
Right.
nervous when they saw our survey.
Okay.
So,
Well, this is great, and you'll make then your bylaws will be final at the next meeting.
Yes.
Have you decided if you're following Robert's rules or consensus, or are you still deciding on that?
we're compiling from various resources.
No, I'm talking about for your actual meeting, conducting the meeting.
Yeah, we thought we would probably have that be part of our bylaws. We're planning on
Right.
doing that all at
Okay.
the same time.
Okay, so you're still discussing it.
Yes.
Okay, good. Anyone else have any questions? Great job. This is what we want. Thank you so much. Okay, now we're moving to communications, comments from the board of directors. Mr. Diaz?
Well, I had some, as previously mentioned, I had an opportunity to meet with the SOC teachers and get their feedback. It was kind of a round in this room, just getting everybody to, in the time allotted before the next meeting, to jump in with their questions and ask some easy ones, mostly hard ones, and did my best to answer those. So hopefully that went, I've gotten some great feedback, and that went really well. And then today, I had the opportunity to do the same thing with the Saddleback Valley teachers, and Mr. Jackson joined me on that one. And again, it was a really, really good meeting, a lot of good questions, and so we hope to be able to do that, as often as we can, as well as often as needed, to ensure that, again, there's not a lot of time in these meetings to convey all the information and answer all the questions and make sure that we have some good dialogue, but hopefully be able to do that as well. In the process, by the way, I'd like to those of you that do keep people in your prayers, Mrs. Lohoff, thank you very much. Her husband is going in for surgery. They thought he might have had a heart attack, but apparently not. Either way, any surgeries that opens you up is serious, so please keep her in your thoughts.
Thank you. Mr. Jackson?
So these meetings, these town hall meetings, are absolutely awesome. I love them because you get the vibe with everybody in the room, right? So they're small enough, it's an intimate venue. And so I would like to see them happen frequently. We are endeavoring to rotate, and you guys tell us if that works, right? So I might be at this meeting this time, and then another meeting, and then then Joseph might be at another meeting, and then Sandra might be, right? So we're rotating in and out, but that it's happening frequently, because we got a lot to talk about. And we got a lot of answers, and we're asking lots of questions, and we're getting good answers, and which is awesome, and we want to share those. And so that's a great venue to have that kind of dialogue. So when we talk about things, I'm going to talk about streaming these meetings on YouTube, so that some of us, if I want to be home in my PJs and watch, maybe I can. But that we get that everybody has the ability to see. So what you see us sort of struggling here is when you come up to the podium, please have 2 copies of whatever it is that you want to talk about, so that we can put one on the document imager over there, right? You saw us going through that, so that the other people can see, the other people at the other campus, and moreover, the PJ wearing viewers, they can watch too and see the documents that we're talking about, right? So when you're standing there talking and we say, hey, can you adjust the microphone? It's so that, the people in YouTube Landia can hear what it is that we're talking about. Because that's all part of the dialogue. And maybe you can't be here for one meeting, and I don't want you to feel like you're any more out of touch from anybody else because you missed a meeting. And sometimes these go a little longer than is perfect. And we want you to be able to plug into that as easily as you can. So pop open your phone, click on that page, watch that YouTube stream, and participate in that. So with that said, there's lots of questions, and we love to hear suggestions at these meetings, right? So everybody's showing up with questions, which is good. Love to hear suggestions, things that you have questions about. One of the questions that, we got some good questions from teachers about awesome things that we can get answers to, and so it's great. So thank you for participating in that dialogue. It's super healthy. We love it. We're going to continue doing that. It's taken a lot of more time than I imagined being on the board.
I did warn you.
We did warn you. We said, are you available 24/7? And you said, yeah, except for an hour each day.
You were joking.
No.
And anyway, taking a lot of time. So Joseph and I had the chance to sit down with our authorizers, and it was a great conversation. It was really great. These aren't nebulous beings behind a curtain, who think strange things. They're people, and they have questions, just like I have, and just like you have. And so it was really a great experience for us to be able to sit down and have a great dialogue, just like these town hall meetings. Have a great dialogue, because that's the beginning of starting to peel away some of these fears, some of this, I don't know what's happening. Well, we're here, we'll figure out what can happen. We'll figure out what's going on. We'll get to the bottom of it. And so I can say without hesitation that there's no one who's not super impressed by our academics. There's no one who's not impressed by that. But they have questions just like we do. And so through this continuous dialogue and asking and answering tough questions, this is how we're really going to get, I think, to the bottom of where we need to get to, which is we're all here for the kids. We're all here for great academics and great outcomes. But we spend a lot of time talking about, all these other things. So come to these town halls, come with tough questions, come with solutions and suggestions if you have them, because it really helps. It really does. So I want to thank you guys for hanging in there with us. I want to thank you for coming there and sharing candidly, and it's tough. And it's tough to come to long board meeting after long board meeting and long board meeting and say, all right, I'm going to trust these people. I'm going to trust these people. We really are working hard to get to the bottom of this, and we will. And it's going to be a beautiful day. It'll be all about the kids. It'll be all about academics and great outcomes. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Mr. Haney?
Yeah, first, for those that are at home in YouTube, what would you call it?
YouTube-landia.
Yes, a big kudos and a round of applause to Raymond for spearheading that. I know that with 3 kids and football and cheer and dance and Boy Scouts, it's not easy to come to these events, which makes me appreciate those of you that are here all the more, because I know what you're sacrificing to be here. But that doesn't mean that there are people that would like to be able to pay attention and watch this. And so getting that up and running with our tech support staff, Raymond, is a fantastic step, and I think that's really great. And I've heard about it from my wife, but other parents as well that think it's fantastic. Raymond's been talking about the macro level of the meetings with the town hall, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the micro level. I've put it out there, and a number of parents have taken me up on emails, and to sit down and meet. Let's go have a cup of coffee. Somebody suggested a happy hour. I'm not sure if that's going to happen, but
I can hear you.
I'll give credit where credit's due. And I got to tell you, those have been equally rewarding. This is not the most comfortable environment for having a good conversation, because we're up here and you're out there. We have microphones, we have a dysfunctional camera, we're streaming, there's a 3-minute time limit. So sometimes just the ability to sit down and answer questions and give you the most honest assessment I can give you I can't think of one of them where I've walked away, and maybe I'm misreading the people I've met with, but every time I've walked away, the people who've walked away have thanked us and have said, we really appreciate that. Because we get the opportunity in a much more relaxed, informal environment to explain, this is what's going on, this is the process that we have to go through. And so I'll put it out there again and encourage you, if you want more information, if you find this a little bit stuffy and stifling, email us. And I know we're making efforts to try to get in touch with you. I know I felt backlogged this week, so I apologize to those of you that email me. But to get in touch with you, to meet for a cup of coffee in the morning, or maybe something later in the day, and just kind of have an informal conversation and hear what you've got to say, and hear what your concerns are. Maybe we're not going to be able to address all of them in that conversation, but you'll at least get the sense of where we are. And from my perspective, it's been probably the most rewarding part of being on this for the last 2 months. So that's all I've got to say.
Thank you. And I just want to give a shout out again to the 2 advisory councils. So you're doing the hard work. It's what we had hoped for when we put this together. Keep in mind that our first advisory councils for Oxford Preparatory Academy were marketing tools, and that was their role. And now it's so that all of our stakeholders have a stake in what happens here, and your owners. And I hope that all of the stakeholders, teachers and staff and parents, take advantage of these monthly meetings. They're going to be regular meetings. They're going to be on the calendar. They're going to be agendized so you know what's coming up. And take advantage of participating in these, because this is your opportunity to be heard by your peers that you actually elected. They're your elected representatives, okay? The other thing that I would like to do today during my comments is to give a shout out to Mr. Andrew Crow. He is with us through Tuesday. He wasn't able to be with us this evening. He stepped up when we needed someone to step up. It hasn't been easy. one of the things that I'll always fondly remember Mr. Crow is a child somewhere hanging him by the leg, and he's crawling around, and they're scooting along the floor, and they adored him. The kids truly, truly adored him. So he's going to be a great loss, but he's still with us and has an email address till Tuesday. So if you haven't given a shout out to him yet and thank him for all of his hard work, I think now would be the time to do it. And I think that's a good segue. Dr. Hall is with us tonight to step in for him. I just wanted to, for those of you who don't know Dr. Hall, she's been with us for 2.5 years as the coordinator of educational programs. She has a 20-year career in education, 4 principalships, and a WASC review team. Boy, could we use that. We want to go back to WASC. So, acting director of curriculum and instruction at the district level, an administrative career that began in Orange County. And you're still in Orange County, and now spans more than 14 years as an administrator. So, do you have any comments that you would like to make?
I have a couple of comments, if that's okay.
Sure.
I am truly grateful to the board for this opportunity to serve our students, parents, and all of our stakeholders. And in this role, I am so deeply appreciative of the kind congratulatory words that I've received as I visited campuses since last Wednesday evening. And I also want to thank Mr. Crow for his endorsement and the amazing support he has given over these past 6 days. So I am very grateful for that. I also wanted to follow up for Mr. Crow on something that was requested at the September 28th board meeting by Mr. Haney. You approved Board Resolution 2017-007. You renewed the $1 million line of credit with California Credit Union. And the question that you asked, Mr. Haney, was what kind of authorization is required to draw on that line of credit? And Mr. Crow said, well, we don't plan to use it, so I didn't look into that. But I'll get back to you with an answer. So essentially the answer is our fiscal policy does not allow management to incur debt that's beyond the day-to-day operations. So drawing on the line of credit does require board approval. Okay. So there's the answer to that. Okay. And once again, thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Hall. Okay, we're going to move to comments from the audience. Is that correct, Jennifer? That are not on the agenda?
Correct.
The public, including public attending a teleconference location, are invited to address the board regarding items not listed on the agenda. No individual presentation shall be for more than 3 minutes, and the total time for this purpose shall not exceed 15 minutes. Ordinarily, board members will not respond to presentations, and no action can be taken. However, the board may give direction to staff following a presentation. Please turn your comment cards into the board secretary prior to the agenda item. How many do we have?
6.
Then we will go for a max of 18. And do we have any comment cards for individual items?
No.
Okay. Okay.
First up is Pam Thompson.
Okay, my name is Pam Thompson. I'm a community member, a staff member, a parent of a special needs child that attended Oxford. I have some skin in this game, okay? I've been coming to board meetings regularly since the day before Thanksgiving of 2016. That was a quick meeting that was called at the last minute, and me and a couple people, I believe Mr. Sessions was here, we sat in that meeting over there, sat in that small room over there, and we were all kind of in shock. From then till now, we as parents and staff have seen the same thing over and over. We've seen turnover in administration and lack of transparency. And when I think about this, I think I'm reminded of a quote, sadly from Arnold Schwarzenegger, and it's called insanity, and that's doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. This, I believe, is what makes our parent community so passionate about our school. If you were to bring in the 800 and so students that came that come to this school, I could name at least 600 of those students. I have touched almost every single one of those students, whether it's been an aide here, been a volunteer, been a parent. What my concern is, two things. Sense of urgency. I understand the need for a little bit of lightheartedness, but in my eyes, what I don't see is a sense of urgency of what's going on with our schools. It took parents to bring up the Turner Agassiz loan, which parents have been asking for for months. We finally received a resolution on that. However, my understanding is that we got away with a small amount, but it may raise our insurance rates. So every decision that is made by the board affects every one of us, whether it's Chino, Saddleback Valley, or our South Orange County campus. We as parents and staff are asking you to take very seriously what's happening right now. We have lost our managing director to scholarship prep, which was started by Jason Watts, who helped start this school. So that's a question that I would like you guys to look into and see, why did Mr. Crow leave? Did he see the writing on the wall? Is there something that we as parents don't know what's happening? I'm so sorry. The next part, real quickly, this is a whole other part. I feel like regards to the budget, I now work in Champion Village, and Champion Village is supposed to be bringing in $30,000 a month, approximately. And I would like to know where that money is going to. Thank you.
Jelani Bayonetta.
And Jennifer, these questions that the speakers asked, do you write those down?
Mm-hmm. They're in the minutes, yeah.
Okay. So and then who owns being sure that we get answers to those? That process, is that a staff thing? I'm just asking.
It varies. If there's an actual question that the board wants to respond to, then you would talk to me and I would either draft up a response or work with you to draft up a response or work with the board secretary. So sometimes the questions are
rhetorical.
Yeah, numerous and things like that, and they're not responded to. But if there's a specific question that one of you wants to respond to, then just talk to me and we'll make it happen.
And we can also agendize something.
That's,
Right. Yeah. So we can agendize like a report presentation like on the Champion Village, like for our next meeting, and give an update.
Got it. And so, but I just want to make sure as a matter of process, good question, it's a good question. And so if we could just sort of operationalize that so that good questions get reduced down, we say to them, so your questions are la and la and la, and then we can get answers to that. Is that how it would work process-wise?
Yes.
Okay. So then just to clarify, you had a couple of good questions. The question that you left with was the 30,000, whether it's in revenue or profit or whatever, we want to know where's that money going, what's it doing. Is that right? 30,000 per Champion Village?
That's $360,000 a year approximately that comes in.
Got it.
To this school.
Okay.
And I'm running on a understaff, and I get that. Denise and Nick have been incredible support. Okay, I'm coming home sweating every night, tired. My 3 staff members. I would not be able to do it without Nick and Denise, and I thank them profusely for carrying that program forward. We have 114 students in that program that I'm responsible for.
Got it.
Just like I feel like I'm responsible for all 800 students at this school, and I've always felt that way. So I would like to know where that money has been going to for the last year.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hey, Pam, I know you ran out of your time, so if there were other questions you had, if you email me,
okay,
I'll either email you with the answer or I'll figure it out. As far as Andrew, I've talked to Andrew and I know, but that's Andrew's story to tell.
Yeah.
So I'll ask Andrew if he's okay sharing it, and if that's the case, then I'll pass that information on.
Okay. I just think that that's a question that parents are going to ask.
I'm sure it will.
That's all.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
It's okay. That's fine. Okay, good evening. My name is Jelani Bayonetta. I teach 8th grade independent studies as well as 6th, 7th, and 8th grade Spanish. I've been with this organization for 6 years now. I came from the Chino campus. Last year was one of the hardest years of my life. I watched some of my closest friends lose their jobs. I witnessed 800 families lose their school, a place that many of them would call their second home, and a place that I called my second home. I came to the South Orange County campus because I believe in what we do, and I love this organization. I don't want to relive what happened in Chino. I don't want to walk in my classroom every single day like I did last year, having to answer the questions, are we going to have a school, or what's going to happen to us? The loss of Chino was like a piece of my heart being ripped from my soul. At our final vote with the State Board of Education, and after we'd been through the process twice with all three, the members expressed how impressed they were with the progress we've made in our recovery plan to save our school. However, at this moment, all I'm seeing is the past coming back to haunt us. Please, I beg of you to take the necessary steps to leave the past in the past so we can move into the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Angela Williams.
Well, I really don't want to talk after that. I'm a little tall with some heels on. Okay, I'll be super quick. I just want to congratulate Lisa on her position as managing director intern, however you say it. Super excited for her with that. I don't blame you for us not getting the 4th notice because Andrew Crow is still on payroll, so he should be here, but that's another story. I'll be graceful. But what I'm really here for tonight is I want to talk about transparency, because this organization has lost great parents, great teachers, great staff, great students because of transparency. And when Sandra, when you talked about the Turner Agassi at the last meeting, and you said you had to hear the noise, and that it was about it's being paid and we're only paying a minimal amount, that's not what we were concerned about. It was the transparency of Turner Agassi. So the noise that you hear is the truth. And I just need you to understand, when you make a comment like that, I still feel like she's not getting the transparency issue. It's about the dollars. And it is. Thank God you got the best case scenario by having the insurance pay it. But we've also got crazy premiums now. We've also paid attorney's fees up until that point. So it's not just the $7,000. But the transparency to the community, to the authorizers, that's what's substantial. And I just want everyone to get it, because that's what the problem is. The other thing I want to say is I met with both Mr. Haney and Mr. Jackson, and for the first time in a long time, I have hope. I have hope for this organization, not because I sat with them and they told me what I wanted to hear, because they can tell you it wasn't everything I wanted to hear, but it was the truth to their knowledge. They were honest, they were forthcoming, and I felt like they were speaking to me with integrity. Now, if they prove me wrong, it'll be a different story when I'm up here. But it's the point of the hope. I mean, the hope, this school needs a hero. This organization needs a hero. And I'm begging you guys, be the hero, be the change. Just please, because you just heard the teacher about Chino. We are next. Our 4th letter, that's reality. And I applaud you guys for meeting with all the people that you've met with. I know how much time you take. I have a husband. He would have said, good luck, have a good, I don't think he'd spend the time. But I appreciate it. And you spent a lot of time with me that day, and you're going to spend a little time with me tonight. So with what you reported out, I'm going to show some grace and not comment on it, because I'm glad it didn't come up right after you reported out. Because I think it's important for unity of these campuses. I want Denise to be a leader. I want Tammy to be a leader. I want Nicole Ananya, the president of the Honor Society, Karen Leeds. Everyone needs to step up and be a hero and stop the nonsense.
That's time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Courtney White.
What's the name?
Courtney White.
Thank you.
Okay, so I have a really loud voice. So I'm going to try and be quiet since I'm on a microphone.
You're not going to make me cry, are you?
No,
right.
I'm not a yeah. Let me begin by introducing myself. I am Miss Courtney White. I'm a 6th grade professor here at SOC. It's my 2nd year here. I would like to start out by thanking Mr. Diaz for attending our staff town hall last week. This was a wonderful opportunity for the staff to have our voices heard. I would also like to reach out and, you know, you guys spoke to this, but invite Mr. Haney and Mr. Jackson to attend a town hall meeting here at SOC with our staff, as we feel it is vitally important to continue to have our voices heard. This town hall setting is a great way to have open and honest dialogue between staff and board members. The staff here loves OPA, as you saw by Ms. Bayonetta, and we want to make sure that our concerns are heard so that our school continues to be able to provide the best educational setting for our students. I thank you for your time and consideration of this request, and I look forward to meeting with you soon.
Thank you.
Megan Malstedt.
Is this good? Up higher? I don't know.
It's in her belly button.
You just hold it for me? No.
Yeah.
That's fine. Okay, thank you. No, stop.
You're encroaching on personal things.
Thank you. Good evening, board members. My name is Megan Malstead, and I'm an 8th grade professor here in my 3rd year at SOC. This will be my first time speaking before the board, parents, stakeholders, and colleagues, in which I felt the need to express my wholehearted appreciation. After attending numerous board meetings, feeling as though words fell on deaf ears, tonight was the first time I felt that true progress was being made. I am empowered by the communication openly occurring between all board members, as well as direct and positive remarks being made by our parents. I now have faith that our voices are being heard by the members of the board. And for the first time, I feel that some board members have the best interests of our organization in mind. Transparency is the key to positive momentum in our organization. And for that, I want to personally thank Mr. Haney and Mr. Jackson for restoring my faith in this entire process. Lastly, I would like to personally invite each one of you to come and visit our campus and our classrooms. I know that our champions would be excited to meet you and have the opportunity to show you all their successes inside the classroom. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
From our Saddleback campus, John Shipes.
Hold on, you need to unmute yourself. Mr. Bridges.
There we go. There we go.
Can you hear me now?
And we see that awesome tie, too.
Yeah, I got that from one of my girls at Chino last year. It's got the yellow submarine on it. Well, good evening, board, Dr. Hall, fellow professors, and parents. As many of you know, my name is John Shipes. I've been an 8th grade professor at OPA for the past 8 years. I've taught children at 3 of the campuses within this organization, both of the Orange County campuses. I've been in the trenches with OPA since March the 7th, 2009. How do I remember that day? Is the date that OPA began? I remember because it was the day that I received my drift notice from Chino Valley Unified on my 27th wedding anniversary. So after school that day, I called my wife to tell her that I was being laid off and to explain to her how important it was for me to go to a meeting to talk about starting a charter school. To make a long story short, it was a difficult struggle to start OPA, but we did it with the support of our parent community. Within a few months after opening, we were approached about opening a charter school in South Orange County the following year. I remember having conversations with several of the key founding parents and trying to explain to them the monumental task of starting a second school while we were still starting our first year in Chino. Needless to say, we did it anyway. Many of us spent countless hours in the effort to open the SOC campus. We gave up half of our staff to SOC in year 2 in order to make sure that the key elements of our program were not compromised. Each of the campuses thrived. We had a strong educational program and the support of our parent community. Then we had a major setback. I won't go into that. Let's just say it's been like a really bad divorce, where trust has been destroyed, and there are hurt feelings all around. We can't change the past. We can dictate the course we take in the future. We can choose between what is best for the children, or we can get caught up in petty differences to the detriment of those children. I support the board's decision to appoint Dr. Lisa Hall as our interim director. When I look around our organization, she is the only one with the qualifications to do the job. I regret the loss of Andrew Crow. He did a great job in spite of all the negative inertia he faced after the mess was made. In closing, I just want to say to our local community, we need to join together and do the right thing for our children. This cannot be accomplished if we have a handful of people trying to undermine the efforts of our staff to put us back on an even keel. As Abraham Lincoln said in 1858, in reference to Mark 3rd chapter, verse 25, a house divided against itself cannot stand. Thank you.
Thank you. That's it? Okay, thank you. Items scheduled for consent. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Yeah. Did we get a change in the? Okay. I'll make a motion. This is the change to just the September 28th. Just a small, some type of corrections.
Okay, which one is this for September 28th?
Yes.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda with the revised minutes as presented?
What's the revision? May I know specifically what the revision is?
Basically, David Barley's speech on board expansion. There was a sentence that was started on line 4 that was just incomplete, and it was just missing a few words. So it was minor, but it was an incomplete sentence.
Got it.
Motion to approve with the revised minutes.
I'll make a motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we're into our items for discussion and action. Approval of amended memorandum of understanding, which you commonly hear referred to as our MOU between Orange County Board of Education and Oxford Preparatory Academy for the operation of Oxford Preparatory Academy Saddleback Valley Charter School. An amended memorandum of understanding MOU between Orange County Board of Education and Oxford Preparatory Academy for the operation of Oxford Preparatory Academy Saddleback Valley Charter School has been proposed by the OCBE and is before the board for authorization. Mr. Crow took substantial time at our last meeting and walked us through the entire MOU, but I think we still have some outstanding issues regarding insurance coverage. And I believe those have been settled now.
Been solved.
So are you going to then bring that information to us and update us on it?
I am going to give you an update.
Okay.
And what you have before you is the final MOU that Mr. Crow and Mr. Diaz.
Can you move that microphone closer
Of
to you?
course, absolutely.
For our YouTube Landia folks?
Hello, YouTube
Perfect.
Landia folks.
Excellent.
So what you have before you is the finalized MOU between the Orange County Department of Education and Oxford Preparatory Saddleback Valley. Oxford Preparatory Academy, Saddleback Valley. So what I have on the now not defective Ladybug is where we will start. It's on page 9, and you have a tab in your binder. MOU is the tab, and if you'll look at page 9, what I'm about to talk about starts with item number 1 under B. So Mr. Crow reviewed a lot of that with you at the September 28th meeting. So I just want to give an overarching statement that items 1 through 4 and carrying over onto page 10. Going through number 9, so items 1 through 9 are a total cost for insurance. The total package cost is $258,000 for the entire coverage. The reason Mr. Crow had asked you to hold off on approving the MOU at the last board meeting was based on numbers 5 and 6 on page 10. On number 5 on page 10, the crime insurance, the upping to $5 million for crime insurance was going to increase our costs substantially, but it was recommended by our insurance broker as best practice. Therefore, that stayed, and that does indeed cost us $21,000 to have that in place.
21,000 total, so 21,000 additional?
21,000 total for that piece.
Okay.
Then when you look at errors and omissions, number 6, that was the second item. Okay, that was the second item, professional educators' errors and omissions liability. As you'll recall, Mr. Crow shared that the Orange County Department of Education wanted us to up that to $5 million and $5 million. And Mr. Crow and Mr. Diaz were able to work with the Orange County Department of Education to get that to $3 million. And our cost for that, our total cost for that line alone is $200,000. 200.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a pricey one.
And do you know what we paid last year under the previous coverage?
That is such a great question. We had $1 million coverage, and I don't have that in my notes. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I should have asked.
That's quite all right. It was substantially less. I want to say it was $68,000, but I could be wrong, but I'll double check my numbers and get back to you.
So then it's just as a housekeeping item. So Jennifer, so if we have questions like that, is that something that you would keep track of to make sure that
Typically,
we get
yes,
that?
I would remind Mr. Crow that he has an outstanding question from the board.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then do we get a list of?
A little differently than the comments.
Got it. And then do we get a list of kind of open questions kind of thing? Like, so right after the board meeting, do we get a list of those? Like, hey, here are the open questions that we'll be hunting down?
We've never done that in the past.
I think they come in the form of the answer when they send it to us, so our staff who doesn't have to do the double work.
Yeah.
So as soon as they receive the response, and that gives them the time to find it, the answer, but that's generally how it comes to us, in the form of the answer.
Got it. I just want to make sure, because if we don't get an answer, then we won't know. So this is sort of a loop
Circular.
that says, hey, if we know what the open questions are, right, like tomorrow morning, we get a list of all the open questions and who's going to get it, then we can be looking for those answers.
So basically, what's in the parking lot, what we're putting in the parking lot until.
We're actually implementing a post-board meeting debrief starting tomorrow, so we will add that to our new process.
Okay.
Cool. Who's doing that? Staff?
It'll be staff.
Got it.
Staff.
That last hour you hadn't allocated yet? It's gonna be here.
Thank you, sir.
So, so overall, items 1 through 9 in section B, total cost $258,000. So I personally would like to thank Mr. Crow and Mr. Diaz and the Orange County Department of Education for their collaboration and their work on getting that taken care of.
How much money are we talking additionally that's currently in the budget?
Got it.
Do you know the answer to that?
I am sorry, I do not.
Does Mr. Stern know the answer to that?
I think I do. We have a question. again, so I can make sure I'm answering the right thing.
I want to say, I want to know how much is currently in our budget for these coverages, and then how much more additional we're going to have to find the money for to include in our budget to be able to cover our premiums.
So I took a quick look at that this afternoon.
Okay.
That question might come up, but I was the last minute, but I believe that number is in the budget $160,000 versus the $258,000 that it is here. And just I spent some time with Candy and with your insurance broker this afternoon on the phone, and put a lot of this together. And it's the first time I saw it.
Where's the D-no coverage? Specifically.
And in a few minutes, we're going to be going over revised budget for SOC, and you're going to be going in the information regarding our budgets for both campuses. But this hasn't been added into that yet?
Not fully. There is extra insurance funds. When in the revised budget, the budget for insurance is higher than it was prior to the revision.
Okay.
However, for SOC, that's the only one we see a revised budget on.
Right.
Assuming SOC gets 60% of this cost, then that was my initial estimate, and I hesitate to be too, without doing a lot of research, but I think that it's about $60,000 we're going to be short.
That's what I was anticipating. Okay.
So I just want to say one more thing, if that's okay. Is that okay?
Of course.
Okay. So for number 5, Mr. Crow had shared that we were paying $6,000, and that got bumped to $20,000, so it actually got bumped to $21,000. So there was that difference. And we had the $1 million, so I might have misspoken. For number 6, we had $1 million coverage, and at that time we had a $120,000 premium, and that got bumped up to.
So it's $80,000 more for $2 million more coverage.
Yes.
Yep.
So overall, I did a little math, $98,000 more.
Okay.
I can
okay.
subtract simple
but
numbers.
He's already figured some extra into that. So once you do that, we're down to $60,000 that we need to find to be able to.
And the D&O coverage, is that specified in here someplace?
Yes. And in fact, I have an email.
I'm sorry.
Of course.
I hate to do this on the fly like this, but workers' comp insurance is substantially less this year, this coming year than it was the prior year.
Can you use a microphone, please?
Good luck. Good try there.
You're Andy Stern, Charter Impact. You're asking some questions, and I hesitate to do too much detail on the fly without preparing a presentation around it. But
sure.
I believe that based upon what I saw this afternoon, I believe that your D&O was about $15,000 last year for about $1 million. This year, it's going to be close to $200,000 for $3 million. It's about $120,000 for a $2 million policy this year. On the other hand, your workers' comp insurance is substantially less. I don't know if anyone's looked at it for a while, and I suspect, given your population, that your workers' comp experience is fairly low, and therefore probably should have been lower than it was. But the numbers I saw today is that workers' comp will be about $150,000 less this coming year than it was last year. So I'd rather put a full presentation together instead of trying to do all this on the fly, but I want to give you some sense and not just have you be in the dark.
Yeah, so you put a number out there, so I think what I heard you say was that for $1 million worth of coverage prior to this claim, our policy was $15,000 a year.
That's what I was told by your insurance
Just
company.
round numbers, got it, okay, appreciate that. And now, after this $1 million claim, and to increase the coverage,
That's both variables, yeah.
200%, now that goes from $15,000 to over $100,000.
Yes, but the only thing, the answer is that's what I was told today by your insurance broker in a schedule.
Pretty reliable.
The only thing I'd correct around that is I don't think that that's directly related to their having had a claim. I suspect that given all the litigation and discussions and letters and the temperature and everything, you would have had a substantial increase in your D&O policy even without that claim.
Got it. And okay, because one of my projects is to say we didn't have to pay the $1 million, but what did we pay? So one of the answers I want to get to is, clearly we're going to have an increase in our rates. That's ipso facto. I just want to know what that number is so we can say, hey, it was worth X number of dollars to not have to pay the $1 million, but we're definitely going to pay something back over the next 6, 7, 8 years or however long that works. Thanks for that, by the way.
Yeah.
Thank you, Andy. I didn't mean to ambush you with that.
And by next meeting, would you have that information for us?
I'll do my best.
Okay.
I'll work closely with you.
Okay.
A bit of good news on the shortfall that we have. We did receive a $10,000 refund for our workers' comp very recently. So that can help with that shortfall,
Very nice.
that $98,000, which is actually 68. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, can I have a motion to approve the amended memorandum of understanding between Orange County Board of Education and Orange and Oxford Preparatory Academy for the operation of Oxford Preparatory Academy Saddleback Valley Charter School?
I'll make a motion.
Okay, do I have a second?
I have a question.
Oh,
Sorry.
okay, can we get the second and then we'll
Yeah,
discuss?
do it.
Do I have a second?
I'll make a second so I can ask a question.
Okay, discussion.
All right. So I'm specifically asking about the commercial auto. So I noticed that teachers and staff members drive a lot back and forth from school to school to school. How does that work? Do they get paid mileage to do that? Do they drive their own cars? Do they have minimum coverages on their cars?
Well, you've done this a lot, so you probably know the answer to this.
I have done this a lot. There is a reimbursement policy, and it's at the standardized rate, which I think at this moment is
The federal rate, whatever it is.
right. Yes, the federal rate, whatever it is, and so they're provided a form to submit for approval. We haven't had a lot of our employees do that, so based on minimal coverage they need to have for their own personal automobile insurance, that isn't something that we look at or require. That becomes an issue if they're transporting children, and there's a whole nother layer when they're transporting children.
Okay. So there's no minimum for them.
For their
I, as a
personal.
teacher, can have the California minimum coverage, still be driving from here to there. Got it. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Is this the only thing that was changed, is the insurance coverage?
That was what the holdup was.
Yes, that was what the holdup was.
Yeah.
Everything, if you'd like me to go through what
No, I
he-
was going to
okay.
say, in the future, can we get a red line of the doc? I mean, in a situation like last time where
Track
we had a
changes.
right, with the track changes, so we've reviewed something previously and now we get a 28-page document in front of us. We can see specifically where the changes are.
Okay.
So what I can say is that the only changes that were made are the ones that I reviewed this evening.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you very much. All those in favor of approving the amended memorandum of understanding as presented for the operation of Oxford Preparatory Academy Saddleback Valley Charter School, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Okay, motion carries. Okay, approval of amended 2017-2018 July 1st final budget for Oxford Preparatory Academy, South Orange County, and this is being presented by Mr. Andy Stern of Charter Impact.
Andy, if you want to be more comfortable, you can sit
I
down.
was going to try and find that little.
Chase has it, and I will happily help you with the ladybug.
He's got it on the PowerPoint. Or
Yes, then we don't need the ladybug. Okay, I will need the ladybug.
Hello.
Hello.
As I'm sure you recall, the board had approved a budget with 841 students in June, based upon an assumption that 25 students would likely transfer from the Chino campus as independent study students to the SOC campus. That didn't materialize as expected, and therefore we were going to be looking at a shortfall all year long and trying to explain that. So we submitted to the board, or suggested to the board, that maybe it made sense to have a revised budget, and also discussed with our authorizer whether they would be supportive of that, and they are and were. So this is a suggested, recommended revised budget for the SOC campus. The reason we're doing that at this point in the meeting is that we've made the assumption that you're going to approve this budget, and then when we get to the next section and compare financials, we'll be comparing to this revised budget. But until you've approved it, it's not really a approved or revised budget. So let me just go through it here. As shown on the screen, which isn't moving anymore. It was until we touched that. There we go. This budget is based upon an enrollment assumption of 801 students with an assumed 98% attendance rate, which is known as ADA, which translates into 785. For comparison, the 16-17 ended up with an enrollment of 818 with 98% ADA, so we're using the same level of ADA. That this budget assumes a surplus of $158,000, which represents 2.2% of revenues, and for comparison, the last year was $236,000. And this budget, proposed budget, has a fund balance projected at $1.8 million, 27% expenses, and a cash balance that would end a year at $1.33 million. On the following page.
Before we leave this page, can I ask a quick question? I understand that I don't think we're still at 801. Is that accurate? What is our current number?
We'll talk about that, but I believe it's a little lower. We will talk about that in the report of the current year, which is a little bit later in our presentation, rather than approving a budget, which is where we're to 801 is the budget. Doesn't mean that we will meet that, but that's what a budget is.
Got it. Okay.
Okay. Oh, sorry. This page, page 3 in the packet, is attendance and data and metrics. There are 3 columns. I highlighted the last column in yellow to hopefully draw attention to it, but let me go through it. In 16-17, we had an average enrollment of 818 with an ADA final of 802. The original budget that you approved several months ago had an average enrollment of 841 with an assumed ADA of 824. This budget is based on an assumed average enrollment of 801 and a 98%, as I mentioned, gets us 785. On the following page, those enrollment assumptions translate into revenue that is provided by the state. The biggest piece, as always, comes from the state aid, which is made up of 3 big pieces, one of which you'll approve in a action in a few minutes. But the final unaudited numbers for last year were $7,020,000. The original budget had $7.36 million, and we're now proposing a budget of $7.1 million. The following page is a summary of expenses. And again, for comparison, last year the final unaudited numbers were about $6.8 million. We are going through the audit exercise right now, by the way, and we expect to be able to present an audited financial statement to the board at next month's meeting. That would be the hope. And the 17-18 original budget had expenses of $7.1 million, $714, and we have, in the most recent effort to revise the budget, we've gone through and at least projected where we think we will be, subject to new things happening all the time, including this insurance discussion we just had a few minutes ago. Some things are higher than we originally expected, some things are lower than we originally expected. Obviously, insurance is a little bit higher, and we've allowed for other increases as well, but we end up with a net of $6.945 million as a current expectation for the year. And that translates into the last page, or the fund balance page, or surplus, which shows that in 16-17, our final unaudited numbers was a surplus of $236,000. We presented to the board several months ago a budget of $225,000 surplus, and when we met at the last meeting, I showed that a proposed or expected surplus deficit would result in a deficit this coming year based upon where we were, but we have reduced revenues subject to the revised enrollment numbers, and we've reduced expenses a roughly equal amount, so that we've come up with what we believe is a revised expectation of $158,000 surplus. So certainly a little lower than original, but not a deficit. And that would result in an ending fund balance of nearly $1.9 million. And the last slide in this package is the expectation of cash. There are typically two lines here, which is when we show it, and I'll show you in a little while, there's an expectation of the budgeted cash for the year and a projected cash for the year. At this point, we have made, because we're here at the end of September, and we have made the projection exactly what we expect the budget to be, that those lines are exactly matching, and so they're not even showing, but they would be exactly matching, because that's what they are. They'll start to diverge as we get farther in the year, because they'll never be exact. Expecting the year to end about 1.3 million, which is roughly 20%. Lastly, normally when we present the budget, we would provide a great deal of a monthly and line item detail. Since that matches the exact projection, if you look at the financial package for September, you'll be able to see exactly what all those numbers are, because it will look exactly the same. So I didn't see the point of printing it and handing it out again. But I'm happy to go through it if you'd like.
Any guys questions?
Yes.
So Andy, I see here that the classified salaries are down about, if I'm on slide page 5, are reduced about $20,000 from what was budgeted, and our benefits dropped about $150,000. That doesn't seem to correlate between a salary and the related benefits.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you the major pieces I can answer for you.
Okay.
Instead of when we put together a budget, what we tried to do, and this is the first year we've done this with OPA, is to try to identify every single person that's going to get hired. We assume a salary, we assume who's going to take benefits, who's participating in STIRS and PERS and all the other pieces that go along with it, and where people are going to be and what the allocation between the two schools are for admin staff and which people are going to be on staff. We're now at a point where we have at least 3 months of history, and what I did, and I spent a good deal of time with Andrew before I've come here, but we instead of trying to figure out, did we plan for that right? Did we assume the right people? Does everybody have the exact right salary? Do we know what every hourly staff how many hours they worked and how many we projected they're going to make? What we did was we took September, and we said basically September is a reasonable measure of where we are going to be for the rest of the year, and we basically use that for the rest of the year. And if you look at the detail in the package, and when you get to that, but you'll see that in most cases, what happened in September is actually just copied all the way through the year, instead of trying to figure out person by person what do we do, and also for hourly staff, what did we spend in September? Seemed like that's a reasonable level for the rest of the year, and so that's where we ended up. Now, on the benefit side, and you'd think that everything on the other side would translate from that. On the benefit side, the biggest piece that's different is health and welfare and workers' comp. And so both of those are in that. And I mentioned the workers' comp earlier, that while we assumed a higher rate from last year, it's substantially lower now, so that contributes to one of the reasons that benefits line is lower than it was before. And the health and welfare line, until we get through the year, we won't know for sure, but we believe that at the beginning of the year, there's lots of changes between schools, and people change their how many, whether they're family coverage or not coverage, or they go on their spouse's coverage. We believe that September seemed like things had shaken out, so we used September as the basic measure for copying through the rest of the year, and that resulted in a number that was lower than we originally had.
Okay.
But we'll know later on how that's played out. That just seemed like a reasonable assumption to make.
Okay, and then continuing through here, because I just got a whole bunch of questions going through it. Professional services in our revised budget is up about $85,000. Is that largely legal, or is there something else in there?
It's largely legal.
And is that based on what, for SOC, what legal expenses are what legal is driving that increase for SOC?
I hope it's conservatism. I don't have any, I wasn't given any specifics about what we were spending. We had a budget in there originally for the legal of $75,000.
Okay.
Year to date, we have spent at SOC $62,000. So $75,000 for the year seemed like not a very rational number. So we added in $140,000 for the rest of the year. I'm not telling you that my hope is we don't spend it all, but I put a number in that hopefully is a conservative level that we aren't surprised like we were last year. So there's currently, the budget is $215,000 for the year.
Okay. And then depreciation, did we accelerate items? So that accounts for the $72,000 increase.
Yeah, so that one is largely because the budget did not assume that we were going to add all these portables that were an additional capitalized amount that are now being depreciated. I have to prepare more. You're going to ask me this level of details in a board meeting.
Sorry about that.
You didn't know Joseph was going to be here.
That's why I met with you outside, so you could ask me all these and not when I was on camera.
Well, and while you're here, and since we're asking you questions, would you?
Columbo on you now.
Oh, okay. Yeah. For everybody else's benefit, would you mind kind of walking through, just give us the 90-second Andy bio? Go walk through your chief business officer kind of experience, what kind of schools, how long, that sort of thing. Just to, because I don't think everybody here has a good sense for who you are and how you come at some of these questions that we're asking.
Sure. If you don't mind, I go back just a little tiny bit for just a second, just to set the stage. So I have an MBA that I got many years ago. I won't say how many. And I worked in corporate finance for a few years, and then I was a CFO for several venture capital-backed software companies. And I did that for about 25 years as a CFO, and about 7 years ago now, I decided I wanted to do something different, and I'd done all right in my life, and so I went to, and I happened to stumble across an organization known as Rocket Ship. Rocket Ship is a nationally known charter management organization. The Rocket Ship when I started, there were 5 schools. Rocket Ship has grown to now 18. When I left, there were 16. I left there 6 months ago. Those 16 schools were in 4 states. We had a $100 million budget. We typically open very large schools similar to OPA at 600 students. My role was chief business officer, and I led the finance team, the real estate team. We built all our own schools. We didn't do any Prop 39 or district type schools. We financed those schools through tax-free municipal bonds, so I had a good deal of experience with the municipal bond markets. I led the legal team, reported to me. The HR team reported to me. What else reported to me? And school operations. So in school operations was transportation and food service and school business operations and all those pieces. So pretty much everything except instruction reported to me. I left Rocket Ship about 6 months ago and joined Charter Impact, and because I thought I could keep kind of doing some of the same things and parlay some of that information. And this is such an incredibly complex world, much more complex than the for-profit world I came from, that I didn't want to take that investment that I'd made and just kind of just not do anything with it. So here I am.
Glad you're here.
I do want to go back because you're going to ask us to approve this revised budget and to our average enrollment.
Yep.
You have it 801. So I at least want to hear where we currently are. I want to hear where our goal is and how we're going to get there. What's our plan of action? So Dr. Hall, do you have anything for us on that? Do you know what our current enrollment is at SOC?
Well, let me tell you what I have.
Okay.
I do not have current enrollment today.
Okay.
I have seen internal reports because nothing is certified by the state until the P1, which is not for another couple of months. But based upon our internal reports, as of the end of September, we were at 796 versus a budget of 801, and the internal reports are that our ADA was about 780 versus the current budget of ADA of 785. That's 5 students. For simplicity, you can assume that it's about $9,000 or $10,000 a year per student. So that would put us, if that played out for the whole year, $50,000 short. I know that Denise. Yes, please. I didn't know you were here. You're sort of slinking up.
So we are, as of today, at 795 students. We have 10 new students starting on Monday.
All right. Awesome. Yes.
So our loss right now is in IS. We are working hard. We're working with our team, Rachel Foy, Carrie Birchler, to get out into the community to try to gain some IS students. But our seat-based, we continue to replace them. So we still have a waiting list.
Now, we used to have a coordinator of IS, right?
Correct. We have 2 individuals on our campus who are working in that function, and that's Katie Booth and Jelani Bayonetta, and they are both working in that same function.
But they're teachers, and right? And so they have this in addition to
Correct.
their regular teaching.
Correct.
Right. And so we don't really have our, kind of like our sales manager that we used to have, right? That would really be out there and engaged. Instead, we're trying to rely, I guess, on other staff members to kind of carry that. So
it works out the same, though, because Denise Hobbins-Seekin was... Okay.
Yeah.
Say that again? Denise Hobbins-Seekin what?
So she was at all 3 sites, at the 2 sites. And so she was here maybe 1 day a week or so. And so now we have our teachers, our 2 teachers on site 100% of the time. And so they're giving the tours and they're talking to the families on a daily basis. So I really see it as an advantage. I think what hurt us was opening up a school about 10 minutes away. So that's where we lost our IS kids too.
So you're talking that the students would have been enrolled in IS over here.
Correct.
Instead, they got seats over there.
Correct.
Right.
Do those two teachers have the resources they need to fill that job over and above being teachers?
They do.
And I think that's one thing that I think would be good to ask.
Yeah, I mean, you can ask Jill.
Yeah, what do you think I did? I leaned
Katie
over.
Booth finally went home.
See if she nods.
Jelani is working with Katie Booth. Together they're overseeing that program, and they're really strong.
And I'm sure they are. My question is, come on up. I mean, having been a teacher myself, I know how many hours you're putting in being a teacher. Mm-hmm. And I know that the tours, at least in the past, I don't know what you're doing now, but they would be like during the day when you're teaching. Mm-hmm. So how do you handle the tours?
Well, since I do teach level 1, they are only on campus for workshop times. So on the times that I do not have children, then we can give the tours.
So are you, okay, so maybe I was a little confused. So you are an IS teacher?
Yes.
Got it. Okay. And Katie Booth is an IS teacher?
No, she is
okay.
an 8th grade professor.
Got it. Okay. So what you're saying is that you do have those open times in your schedule to be able to do that.
Yes, and I think it helps with having a teacher who actually does it to speak to the parents, who knows who's taught it, you know. And I started here 6 years ago in IS, so I've come full circle.
Okay. I just didn't realize that you were IS.
And Katie Booth was IS when she was in San Diego, so she's very familiar with the program and very knowledgeable.
Yeah, I'm not concerned about that. I'm just concerned about the time, you know, to really, because IS, getting people interested, there's a salesmanship to it, right? And you have to have that time to be able to do that. So that is my question. Thank you. Yeah.
Can I ask Mrs. Pasco a question?
Sure.
Have you looked at this budget?
I have. And Andy and I have spent some time on the phone.
And are you okay with it? Or is there things that we should be aware of?
I just think that I have some concerns as to the legal costs, and Andy and I did speak to that. I mean, I think they just need to get under control. It seems like at this point, you know, when we were talking, they might be a bit excessive right now, and so I think this might be a conversation better.
The legal
I just want to make
cost?
sure we're approving a budget that you're comfortable with.
I know that Andy has worked really hard on making this budget work. But Andy and I have both had conversations saying that this budget, we really just need to get the spending under control in terms of legal.
So, I'll respond to that too.
And I'm not trying to put you on the spot.
Well,
I'm just making sure that we're not going to.
she's trying to be polite and not put me on the spot, but let me be clear.
Super polite.
Okay, let me be clear. We did not want to show a budget that had a deficit.
Yep.
And we, and yet there were a lot of expenses, extra legal and insurance that we had to absorb into a budget that was to make up. So we put those in, and then we have to figure out all the other pieces to work. And while I feel like the salaries are reasonable to assume that September all the way through makes sense, I know that we were tight on a lot of other places from where we squeezed other places, but we won't know whether they were too tight until later in the year. But we definitely, in every single, you look through this budget, there are 50 or 80 line items that we went through, and we squeezed a little bit out of everything in order to make both of those first two criteria work, which is get a surplus that was reasonable and also had enough amount in it that even if we missed, we still would meet a surplus, and at the same time cover the extra legal and insurance costs, which we felt were a given.
Yeah, and I guess to follow up on that, I think something that's even more relevant is your site-specific budget. I think for the first time, chancellors have really had an opportunity to get their hands in this. Am I right?
Well, yes, and partly because I think that now you have, I'm going to speak just for myself, that I have areas of working with budgets at school sites, and I don't think they had in the past. But so I think we also had another concern. We had an concern regarding the shared employees. Would you like to talk to that, Andy?
I
I'm so sorry, I'm just confused. Are you saying that you shifted the budget and put fake numbers in just to squeeze things around to make it look good? Because I was back there and I just want to know, is that what I just heard?
am I supposed to, should I respond or?
I'm just shocked because that means that right now everything like, that we're going to find in for, is that what you're saying?
Well,
that isn't what I heard.
That's not what I said, but should I respond?
Yes.
Okay. So we don't just shift numbers around, and for you, any budget, what happens is you have an objective, and then you have to figure out how much money you have to spend. So if I'm without looking, but I'll just throw some things out. Let's suppose we had a budget of $50,000 for books and supplies. And we have to figure out how to reduce things. So we said, okay, let's take $5,000 out of books and supplies. Let's take $2,000 out of auto travel. Let's take $1,000 out of professional development. Let's take $3,000 out of conferences. And now the chancellor at SOC has to figure out how to manage her school within those confines. But it doesn't mean, I wouldn't, that's pretty a pretty broad statement to say that we just made numbers up. We didn't make numbers up. We just set, like any budget, like any department, there's always what ends up happening. You get back to the department manager and say, listen, what ended up is you've got now 40, and don't quote me on this number, 45,000 for books and supplies. You go figure out what you're going to do with it. And I wouldn't say, I don't think she had a specific plan for how she was going to spend the 50,000 before anyway. But now she knows it's 45. And again, don't quote me on the numbers because that's not the right number. Because I think we spent $46,000 just on the new math curriculum. So it's not the numbers aren't what I want to talk about on the fly. I'd rather be prepared to talk about numbers. But we tried to decide where could we adjust. We can't cut staff, and therefore that has to stay. We can't change the insurance number, so that's got to stay. We can't change the depreciation number, so that's got to stay. And when you go through all of that on a budget, when a $8 million budget, 95% of the expenses are basically fixed and you can't change. So there's only 5% of the budget, which is about 25 or 30 lines, that you can take a little bit of things out of here to make it all work. And hopefully, the chancellor, in this case Denise, Ms. Pasco, can figure out how to run her school. If the expenses are inadequate, then we may be over budget by the time that comes. Or if she's able to get these 10 additional students and maintain a 98% attendance rate, and we get those students for 80% of the year, that's going to be another $80,000, $60,000, or close to $80,000 of expenses of revenue, and that can mitigate any overage in expenses, even if it's necessary. And one last thing, and then hopefully I've been as transparent as I can be. This campus, as well as Saddleback and Chino, and the overall OPA community has a history of not spending all the money in their budgets outside of legal type things.
Does that answer your question? Okay.
So would you address that? You started talking about the shared employee, and look, legal, obviously that's got to stop. But
and can I just say something about that really quickly, Joseph?
Yes.
Thank you for being candid. So when Joseph asked you that question, he said, are you comfortable with this? It's really hard for you to stand there and be very candid with us. And I want you to know that we appreciate that, right? If there's something in there that's not right, we need to know about it. And we don't want. No. And he's diving in, so this legal thing, you're talking about the elephant in the room here. We're painfully aware of that. I mean, how many attorneys does the one law firm have working on? A lot. So we're all over that. But thank you for being candid about it.
Can I comment on your statement about the shared employees? So there are several shared employees. I won't comment. I can't comment on whether there's the right amount, too many, not enough. I can't comment because I don't know all of what they do. I'm not close enough to that. What I can say is that for those shared employees, last year the allocation to this school was 33% of those shared employees, and this year it's 60%. And so for those, because it's now 60-40, when you take those shared employees and you double the amount that is burdened on this school, that is a large amount to have to absorb into the same level of revenue and surplus, hopefully. And so something has to give to make that happen, in addition to these other things that put pressure on the budget to make it give. So I think, and so but it's a larger issue. This board and the company, maybe not the board actually, but the company should always be evaluating what employees are here, what are they doing, and are they the right employees, and are they paid the right amount?
Yep. And I'm glad she asked that question about, I mean, this is managerial accounting, right? So this is about coming up with a budget and then giving that to the leadership and saying, execute. And then these are the boundaries that you've got to operate within, and you do it. And I think, but the question comes up is, I'm okay with paying 30 or 40 or 50 or 60%, but if I never see that person, why am I paying anything for that person? So I think so we've got that question. That's an open question, and staff is working hard we're going to build an awesome org chart that shows who's where and what are they doing and what share of that. So that's a work. Better decisions. So that's a work in process as well. And so, but questions like that help us look in the right places, right? So if you say, hey, I'm paying for somebody, I don't even know who that is. Well, that's helpful, right? And we can look into that.
Okay. But if this is passed, are we shortchanging you if we pass this budget?
I can work within the budget.
Okay.
That's different than being comfortable with it.
If we fight the legal part to get the budget under control.
Yeah, I think like Andy said, we're looking at the legal, the insurance, which, we can't do anything about. And then you're looking at shared employees at an impact of over $1 million on our budget. That's I think it was 1.25 we were talking on the phone, Andy, so.
I don't remember. What number were we talking about?
The shared employees, the benefits.
Oh, I think that's right. That sounds about right. About $1.25 million, I think that's right, with fully loaded cost.
Yeah, so what happens, this is a new guy question. So what happens if 2 board cycles from now, we have that org chart, and we say, Whopper, you've been charging SOC for something they shouldn't have been charging. Is there a reallocation that happens? We make a budget adjustment?
That won't be a budget adjustment, but if the organization, if the organization tells us to allocate expenses from one school to another appropriately, we can do that.
Got it.
We do that now.
Got it. So you comfortable with that?
I am.
So that's saying, these are the numbers we have today based on what we know. Give us 60 days to dig into that and make that fair. And these numbers could change, and you could get a lot more, feel a lot more comfortable about that.
That'd be great.
We're all over it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I do.
Okay.
I'm still here. Andy, I've been working with corporate budgets for about 10 years, organizational budgets. So I have a good feeling on that whole, hey, at the beginning of the year, you take educated guesses on what you think will be, and then just like in war where they say every plan lasts just until the first round is shot, every budget lasts just as long as the actuals start coming in. In addition, you've taught me, in one of the recent conversations I had with you in preparing for being in front of OCDE, was the piece about, where was I going with this? My apologies. The piece about how in education, it's really common for even district schools or district organizations to then find themselves, hey, we didn't get the enrollment we were expecting, and district schools are laying off people. And then the final piece that you shared with me was that we have a budget, we have the actuals that are coming in and the allocation, and then we have that final piece, which is audited financials. And until all those come into play, things are still somewhat in flux. This is more to kind of educate the public, share with them some of what you've taught me, some of what I've already learned. Is there anything you can add, elaborate, maybe say a little differently, so that the public is aware of that whole process, that this is not uncommon, that it's typical for budgeted adjustments with actuals and then eventually audited financials.
Yep. So I'm not sure exactly what the question was, but I'll try to talk and see if I answer what you were asking.
Would you want him to restate the question?
No, I want to talk and then see if I cover it all. Because I think I know what he was trying to ask, but I'm not positive. If you'll see in our monthly report, most of the time when I talk, I'm not very focused on where we are year to date, because we put a budget together, and this is our standard format, which is, I'll put it up later, but on the left side is the year-to-date, which in this case is September year-to-date, 3 months of actuals, and then we have a forecast for the year. Oftentimes, the year-to-date numbers can be very off, because we just assumed something was going to come in a particular month, and it didn't, or got delayed, or something was new. But we constantly are trying to forecast where we're going to be at the end of the year, because that's how schools and charter schools and generally nonprofits are not reporting quarterly in the same way that for-profit companies are. It's typically just an annual. So you'll see us focus on that. Our authorizers monitor those financials in several ways. There's at the end of November, roughly, I don't know the exact date, and sometimes authorizers have different dates, but around the end of November, there's a report that's called the first interim. That's where you're required to provide a full accounting in the auditor's or the authorizer's format, and the formats are often very different than the format that we use, and between authorizers can be different or often different, but they look at where was the budget? Where are we year to date? Where do we think we're going to be for the end of the year? Then in the spring, there's another one called the second interim. That authorizers also get that, and they ask for the exact same information. Where are you going to be at the end of the year, and how does that compare to your budget? And they ask a lot of questions. And then right at the end of the year, we finish in June, and then due around the end of July, there's a thing called the UAR, which is the unaudited actual report. So authorizers look again and say, where do you believe you ended the year? And you're hopefully where you report to them at that point is there are very few changes between that unaudited actual report and what ends up actually being audited. In the case of this organization, what we provided as an unaudited actual report, there were some substantial changes from where we actually ended and what we're going to be audited on versus what we actually provided to the authorizers, because we learned more about legal fees. We learned more about the Chino closing. We learned more about the Turner Agassi thing. So there actually are some differences in what we are actually, our final closing financials are than what we provided in the UAR. And then the last piece of the puzzle is the audit. So then you have an independent auditor that comes in, and we send them tons of information. We've been uploading information for them for weeks at a very detailed level, and they determine whether we did a good job or not. And that good job might mean that they might find a few things, but if they're not material, they don't count. But if they're material, and then we didn't do our job. And if we've done our job right, what they end up finding is exactly what we ended up producing for them. And hopefully it was the same as what was in the unaudited actual report, and usually it is. But we, OPA and Charter Impact, we're still learning about each other even through this as our first year together. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Most of it, but to just the only piece missing is, from everything I've learned, this budgeted actuals, adjustments, we had more, we had fewer students. This is normal stuff.
That is normal. The doing a revised budget, as we still haven't gotten to a vote on that, but doing a revised budget, that is an unusual process. But the process of putting a budget together and building in some level of conservatism and into that is normal, because while you can budget 801 students, you don't, and we may be at 806 by next week, it sounds like, but that it was 796 last week, and next week it might be 792, and the week after that it might be 814, and that's why what's funded is, she hopes not, but it can bounce around, as an example, and you don't really know exactly where it's going to be. So all we can do is do our best to project that and build in some level of conservatism into the budget to allow for those variances. And lots of other things change like any other budget. Utilities aren't always they'll never be exactly what you forecasted for the year. Salaries and employee expenses will never be exactly what we expected, because people get raises, people leave in the mid-year, somebody takes a leave of absence, somebody works more hours or overtime. I mean, 1,000 different things will make a budget different, and hopefully we've built in conservatism in multiple places to allow for that fluctuation, so that the net ends up being where we thought it would be.
My problem with the budget is not the integrity of the numbers. That's not the issue that I have. My problem is that I feel like we are dumping onto the SOC campus a budget that hits them on two fronts, of which they have no control. They've got this legal budget that's running out of control for decisions they're not making. This would be different if they had a matter on the campus that was under Mr. Sessions and Mrs. Pasco's supervision, and they're like, yeah, we screwed up. We had an employee on campus, and I'm sorry, the organization's getting sued. It's on our watch. This is not being driven by SOC actions. And so we've now forced this on them, and we're saying, hey, and we're not even clear why this is going on. You've got to do less, take less. And then there's this issue, and this is not either of their words, so please don't think this is something I heard from them, but this is what I've heard from parents, and it's that there's a mystery as to what the shared employees are providing to each of the campuses. And I think...
Those are my words.
I wasn't going to say it was you. But there's a perception that we have all these shared employees, that are getting charged to both of the campuses, and nobody knows exactly what they do. And to be honest, as a board member, I don't know who they are. So I would like to ask staff to put together a list of all of our shared employees, and I would like a job title, and I would like a description of what their job responsibilities are, so that we can finally get this sorted out. Because that has become a huge issue, and it's impacting the budgets that we give to our schools. It's one thing when we ask the schools to pick up 33% of the cost of people you don't see, but when you double it and say, now I want you to cover 60% of those same people you don't see, it's an extraordinary burden that we're dumping onto a campus. It's affecting SOC, and it's going to have a corresponding effect to Saddleback. So I think we've got to get our hands around both those issues as a board and staff, and I think both of those have to be enormous first priorities.
And that's why we love having that guy in that seat.
Why don't you say quiet? I'll let you be all sunshine and rainbows. And
It is a question that the organization and the board should be asking all the time. It is, just to set perspective, and this is not a debate, I'm not making it to be a debate, it is normal practice in multi-school organizations to have employees that are shared. So I don't want you to think there shouldn't be any shared employees.
It would be absolutely foolish for us to have two managing directors and two executive directors. But the problem is what I have heard from when I've gone out and I've met with parents, they want to know, who's this person, what do they do? I have no idea. And we don't have I can't pull up an org chart and say, oh, that person's job is this, and they do the following things, and be able to tell our parents, and they say, oh, okay, well, that's good, our school needs that. And the problem is, this is a line item that we can't defend because we don't know who they are and what they do, and it's putting the squeeze on our schools. And so maybe they look all legitimate positions. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying I honestly have no idea. Raymond, I don't know. I know you've been on, since day one trying, like Don Quixote, tilting to try to get an org chart so we can figure out the organization.
We're going to get an org chart.
We need an org chart, and so that is task one. We want a list of employees, and we want to know job title and their job description, what they do. And that's not a stick at anybody in here who's a shared employee. It really, truly isn't. But if I'm going to meet with parents and they're going to ask me, who is this person, why do they do, I need to know. Because maybe we go back to the parents and tell them, hey, you know what, that person's got a really important job and this is what they do. But if I don't know, and nobody else on the board knows, we can't have that conversation.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, can I get a motion to approve the 2017-2018 July 1st final budget for Oxford Preparatory Academy, South Orange County?
I have one last question. I promise to spend See, I have one last question.
Okay.
So we have endeavored to turn funds back over to the 503c individual at the site level, right? So I'm talking about the funds for the Honor Society.
Yeah, we have not done that yet.
Just want to make sure. I just want to make sure that there's a plan in place to get that money over there.
Yeah. So I don't remember the number for Saddleback. The number for SOC, I think, is around $20,000 that remains, and it is sitting. When you look at the cash balance here, it is included in that cash balance. So let's say it's 1.3 million. I don't remember, but it is included in that number. It is not a good idea, and I've been saying this for a while. It is not a good idea for that Honor Society organization's cash to be sitting on on Oxford's books. It requires that we have to track it, we have to maintain it, we have to monitor expenses out of it, we have to answer any questions about it, and it's included in your audit because it's part of our cash. So therefore, it means it's an audited part of the statements too. So since it's not really the organizations, we ought to move it out.
So it's actually not Honor Society. Sorry to interrupt you, but it's not Honor Society that's going to be receiving that money. It's the Advisory Council. Advisory Council.
So, well, I just want to be sure that the Advisory Council gets their money. And so, yeah, well, let's do it. So what do we need to do to make that happen?
Get direct staff to come up with something.
Oh, is this, can somebody do that?
Someone should direct staff to make that happen.
Can we direct staff to pretty please make the transfer from
If I can, I think you need to check with Mr. Crow on that. I think that there was already progress. I don't know where we are in the process.
It's here on the minutes of the September 28th.
But it's not done yet.
Well, fair enough.
But we
it's
do need to
already-
get a status report to see
Yeah.
where we are in the process.
Yeah, just
Is
know
it-
it's still in our cash balance.
Okay, does that make sense, Dr. Hall?
Maybe we just gotta write the check.
It could be.
We'll bring it over in nickels, put it in a wheelbarrow.
Okay. Are we good? Are we ready? Are we ready?
Sorry.
Okay,
That was it.
okay. Can we get a motion to approve the 2017-2018 July 1st final budget for Oxford Preparatory Academy, South Orange County?
I'll make a motion.
Oh, well, there you go.
Quick.
And a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Did the motion approval go to Mr. Haney or to Mr. Diaz? Mr. Haney?
It was first by Diaz, second by
First by-
Jackson.
Okay, got it.
I'll just vote for it.
Okay, you'll vote for it. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Approve Board Resolution 2017-009, allowing the Orange County Department of Education to issue funds to Oxford Preparatory Academy, South Orange County via electronic fund transfer EFT. The Governing Board of Oxford Preparatory Academy authorizes the Orange County Department of Education to issue funds in favor of Oxford Preparatory Academy, South Orange County, for all public funds received in the Orange County Treasury for the charter school. Dr. Hall?
Can I make a motion to approve?
Sure you can.
Okay.
Do I have a second?
Right now, just approve it?
Do I have a second?
I'd like to hear her presentation real quick, but, I mean, usually that's the order. No?
No, you can actually put the motion on.
Okay, I'll second the motion.
Okay. Now,
It's not quite right. You're not approving what you should be approving.
They're changing the wording.
C.
The wording has to be changed, so don't approve that.
okay.
Thank you.
What does
That's
the
all
wording
part-
need to approve?
We need to change the wording.
We're going to change the wording? Okay.
So the way that it's worded, there's some information that needs to be added.
Okay.
So the board does not need to authorize the Orange County Department of Education to send us funds. They do that already.
Right.
We
But
need
yeah,
to,
electronic funds transfer.
we need you to authorize
Okay.
a change in the bank account.
Oh,
Currently, our funding is deposited into California Credit Union.
okay.
That's who we have the line of credit with. And we keep a minimal amount of money, $5,000 in that account. And so the Orange County Department of Education puts the money into that account, and that is not the account we operate our day-to-day operations from. We now operate from a Wells Fargo operating account. So every time Orange County Department of Education monthly gives us funds, we have to complete a transfer form from California Credit Union to Wells Fargo. And what we're asking for is, in order to streamline our financial activities, you're being asked to pass Resolution 2017-009, which is not being shown on the Ladybug, but it's in your packet. And it has its own tab, and it essentially approves a transfer of funds. I'm not saying that correctly. It changes the bank account. Thank you.
Okay, it changes
But
the
a
bank
board
account?
resolution is necessary because the Orange County Department of Education will not change the account number that our funds are deposited into without a board resolution. So they're asking us, sure, you can do that after you get a board resolution.
So
You can
basically-
change your bank account.
We're going from Wells Fargo to,
We're going from California Credit Union to our Wells Fargo operational account.
And that was obvious in our packet. Good job.
Do you want to make your motion?
Oh, that's why
Now
you
may I
wanted to
make a
make the
motion?
motion and you didn't
Yes,
want to see
please.
my
I'd
presentation?
like to second.
okay.
Thank
so,
you.
Board Resolution 2017-009 changes from our California Credit Union account to our operating account with Wells Fargo. Is that accurate?
Change the bank account.
Bank account, that's what I said, change the bank account from,
Funds, Orange County funds will be deposited.
okay, via EFT. That's still accurate. Okay. Jennifer, do you have that?
I have it.
Okay. Do I not, are you now making a motion for that?
Yes, pretty please.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Absolutely.
Okay. Any more discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Okay, motion carries. Okay, moving on to item number 4, approve ad hoc committee appointed to designate qualified candidates for election to the Board of Directors. Bylaws, Article 7, Section 6, nominations by committee, the chairman of the board or if none, the president will appoint a committee to designate qualified candidates for election to the board of directors at least 30 days before the date of any election of directors. The nominating committee shall make its report at least 7 days before the date of the election, or at such other times the board of directors may set, and the secretary shall forward to each board member with the notice of meeting required by these bylaws, a list of all candidates nominated by the committee. So the recommendation is the appointment of the governance committee, and the governance committee members are Mr. Joseph Haney and Mr. Albert Diaz, to designate qualified candidates for election to the board of directors for a term scheduled. These will expire on June 30th, 2019. This one will expire on June 30th, 2019. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Okay.
Well, hold on, I think Director Diaz, his judgment is suspect because he picked us to.
Yeah, I know.
So-
We're going to give him a second chance.
I'll second it.
Okay.
Are you seconding his comment on your judgment, or are you seconding his minutes?
No, then I'd make a motion on that
All right.
one.
Okay.
There we go.
Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to number 5. Approval of Resolution 2017-10, determining to spend the Oxford Prep Chino Valley Education Protection Account monies in accordance with Article 8, Section 36. Monies received by Oxford Prep Chino Valley from the Education Protection Account shall be spent as required by Article 8, Section 36 of the California Constitution. The determinations of how the money will be spent shall be made in open session of a public meeting of the governing board. And this is going to be presented by Mr. Mr. Stern.
So Proposition 30 directed that part of the LCFF funds are the primary funds that come from the state. They're in 3 categories. There's the primary state aid, there is Education Protection Act funds, and there are property taxes in lieu of other funds. In general, in districts where there are high property taxes, there are very low Education Protection Act funds. So basically, they're just to make sure the total matches up to what it is. So, but the mix can be different depending on the district. The law that passed specifying the Education Protection Act specified that those funds could not be used for administrative purposes. And along with that law, it was required, as you just noted, the requirement for the board to actually see what the budget is at the beginning of each year for the following year, how those Education Protection Act funds are going to be spent. They're only $115,000 to $120,000 out of the millions of dollars that you get, but the board still has to, in public session, approve that. And around this time, you also have to approve what actually happened in the prior year, and that has to be posted on your website. So this is just as a very small piece, but as a requirement that this be presented to the board. It's somewhat annoying to most boards to have to go through it, but it is a requirement that you do it.
What are we talking about dollar-wise here?
$117,000 at Saddleback, $160,000 at SOC. It's not money that you're being asked to spend. It's just an acknowledgement and an approval to post it on your website that we allocated some of the spending that happened already last year into this account, and that you're certifying that none of it was administrative costs.
And so this is, because it says Chino Valley.
There's also Chino, because we're still trying to follow the rules of everything we're supposed to. Chino Valley, which has relatively low property taxes in general funds, had a higher EPA, but it's in the past, but it's not in the current. Basically, you're just acknowledging what happened last year, and that it matched the budget that was approved in the prior year before that.
You weren't here the last
I wasn't here last year. I don't know.
Sorry.
I'll be happy to show you the actuals that presented that if you don't want to approve it, but you have to approve it soon.
You're comfortable
I
with
am.
that?
I wouldn't.
Okay.
I wish I wasn't on camera and on recording, but this is a really stupid thing to have to do, but it is required.
Got it. Okay, great. I'm ready.
Okay. Can I get a motion see, so we're going to do South Orange County first. Approve a resolution 2017-10 determining to spend the Oxford Prep Chino Valley Education Protection Account monies in accordance with Article 8, Section 36. Can I get a motion, please?
I'll make it.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. We're going to do the same thing now for South Orange County. Can I get a motion to approve Resolution 2017-11, determining to spend the Oxford Prep South Orange County Education Protection Account monies in accordance with Article 8, Section 36?
I'll make it.
Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Okay, and again, now we need to do this for Saddleback Valley. Can I get a motion to approve Resolution 2017-12, determining to spend the Oxford Prep Saddleback Valley Education Protection Account monies in accordance with Article 8, Section 36? Can I get a motion, please?
I'll make it.
I'll second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Done. But don't move. Items for information, financial update for September. Boy, this is the Andy Stern show tonight.
It is.
Stern.
He needs to have like spotlight.
Financial update for
Want him to
September
quit?
2017, Mr. Stern.
Can you adjust the word, it's off a little bit, it's going a whole page, did a whole page, but it's not at the top.
Scroll.
Yeah, you. We see you.
So it's getting more interesting.
Can you just move, can you move it down a little bit, maybe it'll be page like, still not quite there. Can you move it down? Go to the top? Well, let's try it. No, not really great, but I'm happy to try, but it's not right.
We'll power through it. Let's go.
Okay. All right. So this is the September package, and okay. So this is September highlights in general. South Orange County, again, early and unofficial data was at 796. We just heard that that's likely to change and not surprising. That's below the budgeted level of 841. That is a slight typo because this whole package is based upon the current budget you just approved of 801. And Saddleback was at 592, which is near the budgeted budget level of 593. We mentioned we've done a lot of work on budgeting with the team. You heard about from Ms. Pasco. I spent an equal amount of time with Ms. Lohoff. Is that how you say it? Okay. And summary, you probably know this better than I do, that Chino Valley ended the September 30th reporting period with $1.1 million of cash, and we have assumed that the Turner Agassiz payment and the insurance would cover, and they don't show in this report anymore, and it is estimated that the cash at the end of 12/31 would be $1.06 million at Chino. At some point soon, this board will need to approve a plan for what to do with those funds. And That's part of the MOU that was with Chino. You have to officially take an action. You're permitted to do whatever. It's pretty broad, and I'm sure you've talked to your attorneys about this. You have a lot of latitude to what to do. You can donate it to somebody else. You can transfer it to other schools. You can allocate it to a new charter, but you actually have to say something officially about what you're going to do with that money. You can't just let it sit there.
What's our timing on that?
Well, that's not completely clear. I interpret it to mean that there's about a 6-month window, seems like, but it's not completely clear in the MOU. There's a lot of ambiguity about a lot of things, and I had an exchange with your attorney as well, Procopio, and they don't think there's a 6 months cutoff, but it seems like a reasonable time to them as well. So I think the board should at least make a statement about that at the next board meeting.
Our goal is to do that at the November 20th meeting.
Are there any kind of liabilities as far as having to file taxes another year? Are we postponing some other thing that we
might want to have some discussion about whether we might want to allocate some funds for, and this is what you should be discussing, and for an audit, or for if there's insurance that might be owed on Chino, or we believe we're completely done as of last week. I don't know if I've seen all the bills, but completely done with all of the facilities and contracting work that needed to put the campus back to where it was. But so I think we'll be done and know pretty closely what we're going to spend. There is still one employee that is sitting on those on there. It was an office manager last time I saw. So we'll have to have the discussion around that, whether we want to maintain that going forward. The board can say anything. I've allocated some funds for ongoing legal expenses. I'm sure we'll continue to have some, although I don't know if it'll be at that level that I've assumed all the way through December. But you have the latitude to say, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna set aside this much for renewal. We're gonna set aside this much for some limited expenses or something like that. But we do have to say, again, you have freedom, pretty much complete freedom to do whatever you want, but you do have to do it. Okay, on the next page, which is page 5, there's attendance. Again, it's not really all that meaningful at this point, but in the column of attendance, the actual, as far as I'd heard, again, anecdotally somewhat, is 796 because it's internal. We have a budget of 801, and in this forecast, we have assumed that we're going to meet budget. So when you look at these numbers, if we don't believe we're going to meet budget with them, that's not our forecast, then we should be adjusting our forecast at some point. But at this point, we have assumed that for the sake of this budget. Page 6 is revenue. Because we've assumed that we're going to be exactly at budget, it's not surprising that the revenues are matching the budget, but also because this is a new budget, and if you'll see that in everything about this particular one, SOC, because September is actuals and all the forecasts for the rest of the year match exactly what the budget is, it's always going to be exactly where we're going to be. And then at some point when our budget at 801, we assume something different than the 801, then the revenues will adjust with it. Same thing with expenses, page 7, so I'm not going to go through it since we went through that at great length. And the same thing with page 8, which is the fund balance. Again, it matches what you just approved. And the same thing with cash balance, where you now see both actual and budget on the same line, because we've assumed the same thing at this point, that there's no difference between budget and the projection. I hope and assume there's no questions on SOC. Okay. All right. Saddleback Valley. Slightly bit more interesting. Again, the same kinds of things. This is page 11 in your package. Last internal reports I saw where we were at 592 with what looks like a 98% ADA. The budget was 593, and for the purpose of this forecast, we have assumed that the budget will be, or forecast will be equal to budget. That's changed a little bit, so you'll see trend on the right side that it was a little higher and now what looks like a little lower, but again, they are internal, unofficial reports at this point. On the next page, page 12, this is where you'll start to see some diversion between what we forecasted and what we budgeted. On the far left is year-to-date. You'll see that at the actual year-to-date, which is 3 months, We are $725,000 less than we thought we would be at this point. The biggest piece of that is that we had been expecting the property tax payments from our authorizer by now, and we haven't seen them. We've reached out to them to get a schedule and haven't seen the schedule of when we should start expecting them. We're surprised that we haven't seen them yet, but we don't expect that. We should expect that only to be a timing issue, so we don't have any reason, because they're legally obligated to pay what they're supposed to pay, that it's just a timing issue, and we still expect the year-to-date or the full year to be equal to what we budgeted from a revenue standpoint. But the payments are not coming out as when we expected so far. The only other item to note is the bottom here, and I didn't, the tab, the second bullet on top explains it, although it's not done very well, that when we put the budgets together, we did not assume anything around food service. We did not have the program approved at that time, and we didn't have estimates about it. Now we have estimates, and we have assumed that there is going to be some level of food service revenue all year long, and we've assumed this level of expenses. We've assumed that they net, and so far that appears through September that that's what we will see. So you will see, I think it's $57,000 if I recall, more revenue on the top line than we expected, and 57,000 more expenses on the bottom line. So if we're over by 57,000 at the end of the year, that will be the reason, that would be a reason that would be explainable. The next line, and stop me anytime, by the way. Page 13 is expenses. Most expense categories have been significantly reviewed and refined for the remainder of the year. While the year-to-date is below plan, that's, again, year-to-date's going to always be a timing issue. It's really more critical to focus on the full year forecast. We believe we're going to be over. Compensations expenses are expected to be higher than planned overall. And we did the same thing here from a forecast standpoint, as I mentioned about SOC. We took September and assumed that September is a reasonable expectation for the full year, so we projected that equally all the way through the rest of the year. It could be that that's conservative. One place, for example, that I believe it would be conservative is hourly wages. Typically in a startup month, hourly wages can be high, and oftentimes they're lower in months when there's time off. There's a 2 weeks vacation, or the end of the year ends before the end of June, but we've assumed that basically they're even throughout the whole year. So I'm hoping that while they're higher than budget, that they're conservative. The only other place I drew attention to was this facilities line. Why is that higher? I think that includes the equipment leases, but now I don't have a note about that, so I actually want to get back to you on that.
When wasn't that we were buying out of some leases?
We did, but and the new lease is more money than we originally planned as well, but I'm not sure that that's in that line item, so I want to get back to you on that. I circled it, and yet I didn't draw attention to it up on the top at this point.
That was where you wanted Albert to ask you a question about it.
Yeah, maybe. We did accrue extra legal expenses in September. What's also been happening is a delay. Your legal firms have been sending bills pretty delayed, and then we don't see them in advance. So in order to kind of get ahead of that, we've started accruing an amount into each month. I think it was about $10,000 we accrued into the month here. We'll find out when we get the bills whether that's accurate or not, but we're going to continue to do that so that we're not surprised by catching up at the end of the year on legal expenses.
Yeah, it's probably $10,000 a week there for a period of time.
Fund balance is page 14. All that combined leads us at this point to believe that, I know what that, I don't know what that is. Forget that again. All that leads us at this point to believe that our forecast is about, for the surplus, is about where we thought it would be, although some are higher and some are lower. And we will, as always, monitor that on a monthly basis. And lastly, not surprisingly, the cash page is expected to end up at about where we thought it would be. If we are assuming that the fund balance is about what we thought, then, and enrollment is about where we thought, then not surprisingly, the cash is going to end up where we thought. So that'll, again, adjust as we get more information throughout the year. Any questions on Saddleback? Okay, Chino, page 17 is just to give a context of what we use for assumptions. One, we only forecasted through 12/31. Second, we assumed some minimal level of expenses, including some office management, accounting services, which is charter impact, and some storage expenses that we should discuss, but those total about $13,000 a month. Plus, I've assumed $50,000 a month for legal. Hopefully, it wouldn't be that much, but that's what is in the assumption. And we've also assumed that we would write off and have written off all of the assets that are that were at Chino. That amounted to about $1 million in depreciable assets that would have been depreciated over time that we've now written off. There's no cash impact of that write-off, but it does reflect in an income statement and it reflects in your fund balance, and you'll see that on page 19, which is that year-to-date you see $1.5 million of expenses. $1.1 million of that is mostly around the write-off of those assets. And you'll see also that that affects the fund balance on page 20. The fund balance is basically the same as retained earnings, as I've mentioned before, but it doesn't change the cash balance by that write-off, even though it does reflect in the income statement. And the last thing I wanted to point out was page 21. At the end of September, this is the cash forecast. At the end of September, there was $1.1 million of cash. There's still some limited amount of receivables that are still due and owed. There's some prior commitments that are owed from a prepaid standpoint or owed standpoint, as well as owed to the other schools, as we normally do. We pay off everything that's owed between the schools for shared expenses. I've reflected the $7,500 that'll be paid to Turner. I've shown that in November, and based upon all the assumptions I've just laid out, that our current estimate is that we'll end up with about $1,050,000 at the end of December at this point. And there are a number of appendices here which show a bunch more detail about what I just walked you through. And happy to explain or go through any of those.
You know, it's just 10 o'clock. You dive into these a little?
Anytime, anything you want. I'm here at your pleasure, and I know that hopefully that was a joke, but I'm happy to answer it if it wasn't. I've been later than that for meetings too.
Any questions?
Why do we get these big bills? Are we accruing these? Are we doing prepaid insurance? So we're from an accounting period to accounting period. I noticed we just get hit with these big checks.
Well, typical insurance is typically paid on an annual basis, typically. Once in a while, you can strike a deal with your insurance company to pay something on a periodic basis. Given the amount of cash that your organization has, I'm not sure that it's worth the effort of doing that. But the way we expense things is we expense it over the period of time that it covers, even though it might have been paid up front. That's true of many prepaid expenses we do.
So you've been doing this for 25 years. How would you classify OPA's financial health?
This is a very healthy organization relative to schools and charter schools specifically, but very healthy. It has way more cash than is typical, has a higher fund balance than is typical, pays its bills. If you look at one of the things here, there's virtually no accounts payable because In fact, I've even counseled.
Stretch that out
I've
a
even
little bit.
counseled the team to sometimes why are we doing that, and we're just setting expectation for every vendor to expect to get paid as soon as they send us an invoice, and I know that's true because some of the vendors, if we don't pay them for a couple of days, they call and say, "Where's my check?" On the other hand, because there is so much cash, there's not a lot of reason to not to sort of maintain it and track it and have an accounts payable aging balance, because you're going to owe it at some point anyway if it's an approved expense. So I would say that's just by itself a reflection of a very healthy organization that can afford to pay all its bills, not just on time, but basically before they're due.
Any other questions?
We get any discounts for paying early? Because some vendors do offer that.
There are a few that do offer it, and I believe that we take advantage of it. I think that Carrie Thuret's team, I think, is pretty good at watching for that. There aren't a lot, in general, lots of schools don't have typical big vendors. There's lots of usually smaller vendors that don't have the same kinds of things that large corporations are typically have available to them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, board meeting live streaming. This is a project that Mr. Jackson took on, as Mr. Haney alluded to earlier. We are in the dry run phase. I think this is dry run number 2. Once we get through the dry runs and we feel good about the technology, then we will bring it back to the board for action, but we need to get some advice as to what kinds of things we need to be considering, how do we want to use the information. Closed captioning, I think, is coming into play in January, so this would be additional information that we would expect staff to come in with. But
stored media.
But I didn't want to give Mr. Jackson.
I don't think that's for live streaming. I think it's for stored media.
Right, it is for stored media.
Yeah.
Right. So I wanted to give you an opportunity to bring everybody up to date as to where we are on the live streaming.
Got it. So YouTube Landia, right? This is like not rocket science, pretty basic stuff. I don't know if do any of you have access to the stream? Does anybody have access to it? Are you watching it now? But you were watching it before?
I know people that texted me.
And what did they say about it?
They said it was awesome.
Fantastic. You didn't think it was awesome?
No, I just don't know how people got the link.
I don't have the link. So I love that you guys have it because I don't have it. Yeah, I don't see it.
I would say the name, but I don't want to.
It's okay. No, it's good. Hey, it's good.
When I meet with you after.
All right.
I think he pointed it,
Yeah. So the goal is obviously to make this available to everybody. I call them the PJ crew because I think you should be able to be in touch with everything that we're doing. These documents, all these things should be available, as part of where it says board meeting. All the stuff that's here, all these PDFs, all this should be made available to you, very early. So this is part of this whole endeavor is to give you access to the source data. Look at this, what Andy's giving us, we had this a week ago, you should have it a week ago, so you show up ready to talk about it, right? Not show up like this is the first time I saw it. So that's the whole, I think, thrust of this YouTube thing is, the democratization of all this data, and make it available to everybody in a way that they can do it. I turn into a grouchy bear because I want to go now. I want to do it now. I want tonight to be the first night that we did it. I wanted last week to be the first night that we did it. And we're still talking about it. And even tonight, it's a discussion topic. And I'm done discussing. Let's turn this thing on and start making this available to everybody. So, but all we can do tonight is talk about it because it's not like a decision time. It's a talk about it time. So hopefully we're going to decide about it soon. And we can all watch it.
Raymond?
What?
You make this board so much more fun.
I'm just saying.
I am too. I mean,
so there we go. We've discussed it. So what do we need to do to do it? I wonder.
What we need to do is get a report back. I mean,
I'm reporting back.
you didn't watch it. You were the actor in front of the camera.
I'm not. Okay.
Yeah. So, Jennifer, do you have anything?
My question was the purpose of it to only be live streamed, or is it to be saved and put on our website? And if so, is that going to be replacing the audio or in addition to the audio? And that would require a board vote.
So I think what we're doing now, this is a best endeavor thing. I think we turn this into a, magnificent project that's, if the thing fails, we have to shut up and go home because YouTube stopped streaming. I feel like we're going to do our best, right? And if that little document imager doesn't work, I don't want to have to stop the board meeting and go home. I want to say, look, man, we're trying hard to get this stuff out there. And if the document imager doesn't work, we're going to press on. I'm sorry about that, but you are in your PJs, so that's awesome. But the idea is, I don't want it to make it a big production to the point where, well, now we can't do it because something's not right. The webcam doesn't work, so we got to turn it off.
So as of right now, it's not the official record, it's just a supplemental way of accessing what we're doing.
But we will be taking the audio, we're not doing separate audio now. This is the audio that will actually become the audio that we put on our website for storage.
I have 3 recordings in case one of them fails, and this is the clearest one, the YouTube.
Okay.
So I'll rip the audio off of the YouTube and store that.
That's cool. Yeah. Because I'll totally pick my nose and it'll make...
Now you're crossing the line.
Right. So anyway, what do we need to do to get this thing going?
You got direct staff.
Okay. How do we do that?
Is any kind of a board action required if this is going to be supplemental and not part of the record? That's the question.
This is already happening, man. This is like the rebels taking over. They're already streaming this guy.
I wouldn't think so if it's not something that we're going to, if it's casual and we're not committing to it, if something's not working, that's just kind of been the practice in the past. It's if we're going to do it, we're going to do it and commit to it. So once you let your kids have cookies in their lunch, then they want cookies in their lunch every time. So if we want to make sure that it's working and it's reliable, and that we're not going to disappoint in a couple weeks because it didn't work, and now the jammy people are upset because they had to come in. So I think that it's probably not actionable if it's going to be supplemental, and if there are not some legalities regarding closed captioning that will apply. If there are, then I think we need to set it out until we have the answers to that, and then revisit it.
Got it. And based on the super, I call it Procopio, and I'm like, you can bill me for 3 minutes for this conversation. Here we go.
They only bill minimums of 6.
And so it's, if we store the video, on the website and that becomes the new, then closed captioning could become a topic. If we make it available as a stream, because we don't have to have signers here, I think. I don't know what the rule is, but if we're streaming it, it's a best capture, it's a best effort, and then the audio that's available on the website later is, that's the record. That's what we are committed to, is making the audio available.
Right, exactly.
And we're going to stay committed to that. And this is, this is what we do to help everybody else, right? So this is silly. Having to do this in a meeting, I don't want anybody to have to do that. I want everybody to be able to see great audio, see the materials, have access to that data.
The special effects are good too, right?
Got that? Yeah. So can we do it? Yeah.
I think what we want to do is just now over the next 4 weeks, right in between meetings, is see what the feedback was, see if we need to make any adjustments. And then I think with the pleasure of the board, I certainly want to get everybody's input. And Mr. Diaz, how are you feeling about this?
I just want to make sure that we're, making sure all the compliance and that we're not skipping things in our rush to get it out.
Right.
So as long as we dot our I's and cross our T's, I have no objections at all. I see these people kind of getting tired holding the phones too, and it'd be nice for that to go away for them.
Well, it's better because it's the whole thing and not just someone's interpretation of one portion of something. I think that's the big benefit that you get from having it. I personally like the audio too. I go back and listen to the audio every time, personally, and take notes of things. Because sometimes I want to make sure I hear it the right way. Sometimes I want to hear it back. But I think the key
So I guess my question is, so we're not going to use this as our storage, we'll take one of the 3 audio feeds, and actually that will be what goes on to storage on our website as our official record that goes out to our authorizers. But does this live somewhere? In other words, I keep hearing the YouTube.
Once it's on the net, that's
Right,
it.
so
It
it'll
lives
be there
forever.
forever. Okay.
So watch the nose picking.
Yeah, I think I just want to run that by legal just to make sure. Okay, that would be it. Yeah. And then any feedback to see if we have to do any more tweaks, during the next 4 weeks to make sure
Like
that
adding a
when we
laugh
bring it
track.
up live on the November 29th meeting.
Improve the document.
Okay.
I had it for 4 hours and it was fine. And I just,
It got tired. They got tired.
That's your story, you're sticking to it?
That was true.
Okay, are we good?
We're good.
Okay. Moving to the Governance Committee update, the Chair of the Governance Committee is Mr. Haney. Do you have any kind of an update for us?
Just that we now are officially charged to go through all the applicants, applications that we receive to add a 5th board member. And we get 16, 19? What do we have? Is it 6 plus? We have a good number.
Is it too late?
I believe the cutoff period ended. But I am looking forward to going through those. I'm looking forward to going through it with you and getting a process out and calling people in for interviews and getting a 5th person up here because it is a lot of fun.
You were the worst recruiter ever.
It's to everybody who submitted, I really appreciate it because it is grueling. It is as grueling as everybody said it was. The very first time we got up in front and they asked us if we were sure we wanted to do this. But it really is immensely rewarding. You get to come and see little kids come up and play the recorders, or you get the cast scores come out and you realize that what our teachers and our chancellors and our deans are doing is really, really impressive work. And if you can have a small hand and kind of help them that process along, you can go to bed at night real easy. So thank you to all those people who at least threw their hat in.
Thank you very much. And the Finance Committee update, Mr. Jackson.
So we're still actively soliciting folks to come and be associated with OPA in finance, and so it's really hard to get people to want to sign up for that. And so I'm trying to be a good sport about it and say, come on, man, it's not so bad. We got Andy here. It's easy. But really are. So we need to, Raymond needs to redouble his efforts to...
How many applications did we receive?
0 applications.
None? Really?
Yeah.
Well, you have a number of...
I got people to give me their phone numbers. Yeah, they didn't know what I was asking
You lied to
for.
them about why you wanted it.
No, for real. I passed around this thing at the town hall. People thought it was just like a sign-in. And then when they found out what it was, they scratched their name on it. Anyway.
You need to do a better sales job.
I got to do a better sales job.
Okay.
So that's all I got.
Okay, thank you. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
Yep. Make a motion.
We got 2 motions. Do I have a second?
Yep.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? The meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.